This conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission for February 17, 2021. The meeting is being conducted by remote participation, and I'd like to start off by reading a statement pertaining to the open meeting law. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town of Harwich Conservation Commission on February 17, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. will be conducted via remote participation. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Harwich website at www.harwich-ma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so via recording on demand on the Harwich Channel 18 website or on our Town of Harwich YouTube page. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. I hope everyone's doing well. Thank you for participating tonight. The first item on the agenda is a request for approval of conservation restriction 46 Indian Trail, map 34, parcel K3-2, as per order of conditions SC 32-2414. The Conservation Commission is to approve the conservation restriction set in the property. Let's see, Amy, should we get a summary from you, or do we have a representative here that wants to describe the process?
Well, we have both the Betsy Bray and Brian Wall, her attorney, here, so I'll let them speak if you like, and then I'll just add in any comments that I might have.
All right, thank you. Sounds good.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Brian Wall. I'm an attorney, and I represent Betsy Bray, who is on the hearing. I see her in one of the squares tonight. The commission probably recalls this. Not very long ago, the commission approved a single-family dwelling and septic system, driveway, utilities, and other appurtenances at property at 46 Indian Trail. The house is close to the 50-foot no disturb zone, and a condition of approval that the commission attached in the order of conditions by agreement of the applicant was a conservation restriction. So after the permit was issued, I worked with my client and we drafted up a proposed conservation restriction, which I submitted to the commission for review. Just by way of background, the way that we came up with the declaration is as follows. My partner is town attorney for Bourne. My firm represents the town of Bourne. And so I looked at some conservation restrictions that had been accepted by the Bourne Conservation Commission. I also looked at the Division of Conservation Services, Executive Office of Environmental Affairs. They have a model conservation restriction. And I kind of took an amalgamation of the two to come up with what I thought was an appropriate instrument that would effectuate the purposes that the commission wanted. And I did submit that to the commission with my client's permission. I know that some of the commissioners, maybe all of you, have reviewed it. Mr. Ketchum caught 2 typographical errors, and Amy sent me an email to bring that to my attention. I corrected those today, and I sent a corrected copy. So that's really it. I think this is what the commission is looking for, and I'm hoping to have some positive feedback from the commission tonight.
Thank you. Amy, any summary comments for us on this?
Sure. So essentially, the most important part was that the area that was outside of the limit of work was to be subject to the conservation restriction. And I looked through the language. I thought it was good. I did put Brian's corrected one that he sent me in your Dropbox when I got it, so you do have it. And I didn't have any substantive changes to it. So I'll just, for now, I'll just leave it at that so the commission can ask questions. I would recommend approval of the restriction.
All right, thank you, Amy. I'll start with questions and comments from the commissioners, and I will begin with Commissioner Mark Coleman. Mark? Or
And it's actually a little hard to hear you sometimes.
yeah, okay. I'm using a different phone tonight, so I guess yeah. Let me know if I'm not coming through. Okay. Can you hear any background noise right now? Okay.
No.
All right. That's good. I've got an aquarium not too far from me, bubbling away.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I'll just try to speak up. It is a different phone from what I usually use. Mark, I was going to begin with you in terms of questions or comments on the conservation restriction.
I couldn't hear the first part of the broadcast, Brad. I'm trying to catch up.
Would you like me just to quickly reiterate, Brad?
Yes, please, Amy.
So when we approved this application for a home, the commission, as one of their orders or one of their conditions, required that a conservation restriction be placed on the property for any area that was beyond the limit of work as per the approved plan. House was, between most of it between the 50 and 100, very small area outside the 100-foot on Indian. This is 46 Indian Trail, and in order to get the septic in outside the 100. So on a mitigation kind of constrained site, as mitigation, the commission considered the conservation restriction, and I would recommend approval as it is written.
I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Mark, you had no comments?
Yes, I'm all set, Brad. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Stan, any comments or questions?
No, I'm fine with it, Brad.
John?
Yeah, this thing, the conservation restriction seems fine to me. The only thing is, I actually caught 3 typos, not 2, and you corrected the 2, but not the 3rd. And it's a very little thing, but it seems to me you want it all right. And so in the same sentence where you turned the word many was the typo, it should have been may. You fixed that later in the sentence. There's the word or, which should be of, I believe. So.
Okay, I'm looking right at that, Mr. Ketchum. I'm happy to make that correction.
Okay.
I apologize for
Just,
the.
it doesn't make sense otherwise, so I thought I'd point it out.
No, you're 100% right, and this gets recorded at the registry in perpetuity, so best to get it right. I apologize for that typo. I'll correct it and send Amy another.
No problem. Otherwise, it seems pretty thorough to me.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Carolyn?
I have no comments, thank you.
Okay, Ernie?
Yeah, I looked at it. I'm just trying to envision any activities that might take place on that site. And it seems to cover everything. If someone wanted to put a fence down the middle of the restricted area, I don't see anything in here that would necessarily prohibit that. Essentially, what we're trying to do here is just prohibit any activity in this area. Is that right?
Correct.
So if someone did want to put like a fence down the middle of this, is there anything in here that would prohibit that?
Mr. Wall, do you have a response to that?
I do. So in prohibited activities, section 2D, it does prohibit the erection or maintenance of fences that do not interfere with the passage of wildlife or the conservation and passive outdoor recreation purposes of this restriction. So I would suggest that would be subject to the commission's approval. I can also say that my client has no intention to put a fence. One of the conditions of the order of conditions was that the 50-foot setback was supposed to be delineated with either a living fence or a split rail fence to make it clear that that area beyond 50 feet is no disturb. If the commission would like me to tighten up that language and say that fences are prohibited in the area beyond the work limit, that would be fine.
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, it does, so conceivably, they could put a fence in the restricted area, although it'd have to be sufficient that it wouldn't restrict patches of wildlife or anything, but it could potentially restrict recreational use and that sort of thing in the area if people wanted to avail themselves of that.
Well, just to be clear, what it does say is that do not interfere with passage of wildlife or the conservation and passive outdoor recreation purposes of this conservation section.
Okay.
So I got it from the model. I mean, I didn't write that, so I think that covers you. But if you want to feel more comfortable, again, my client has permission to put a fence up.
No, the way you interpreted that's fine. I'm all right with this. I think that does it.
Yeah, because I think if any fence went up, the Conservation Commission would have the prerogative to say, well, that interferes with the purposes, and you could require it to be taken down.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Well, and it would be within our jurisdiction anyway, so they'd have to, doesn't have a permit for one, so they still have to come back for some sort of permit, I would believe.
Yeah, I agree. At a minimum, an RDA, probably a permit, and that you would catch that that's a CR on record, and that would be kind of the way it could get reviewed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, thank you all. Any comments from members of the audience? All right, well, seeing that, now I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve the conservation restriction of 46 Indian Trail, map 34, parcel K3-2. Can I have a second for this?
I'll second it. Stan.
All right, seconded by Stan. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. And I'll proceed with a roll call starting with Mark.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
Myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, staff. It's much appreciated. Have a good night.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a request to amend an order of conditions for 19 Wacquasit Road, map 5, parcel K1-41. It's a request to amend the order of conditions SE 32-2360A, and it's a request to change a patio to a sunroom, install a roof of another portion of a patio, and install solar panels on the roof. Do we have a representative here tonight for the project?
Yes, Brad. Arlene Wilson, AM Wilson Associates, for the Stevens. And this is a project that's filed only under your local bylaw. Under the state statute, the project doesn't rise to an alteration. There's an old decision from DEP that says where you're not altering the ground by doing your project, it's not considered an alteration under the Act. So the Stevens have a raised stone patio on the water side of their property, and they are asking permission to construct a sunroom over the southerly part of that patio and to roof over an area on the northerly end of that patio. A family member has had a nasty bout with skin cancer recently, and it's important that they have some additional area where they can enjoy the outside without being in the outside, if you can picture that. The the stone patio already has a drainage system, was approved under the open order of conditions. The roof leaders will be tied into that system. There's no additional runoff because there's no additional hardscape involved in the house alterations. They also want to put some solar panels on the roof. I imagine you'll be seeing more and more requests to do that kind of thing in the future. There is only one small item that actually is going to be installed on grade. They're asking for an 8x12 shed in the southwesterly sideline. It is more than 50 feet from the wetland edge. I apologize for two things. The first is that after all this time, I probably should have learned never to believe my client when they say they haven't made any alterations to the site since the last time I've been there. And I understand from some correspondence this afternoon that there has been some fencing installed along the sidelines and on the water side of the property. There was a chicken wire fence some years ago along the top of that bank. I know it was there before we installed the fiber rolls that were used for erosion control here. And apparently that has been replaced with some white vinyl picket style fencing. We had some correspondence with Amy. I only just saw her response about a half an hour ago when I came in. I believe she's suggesting that we file a new application for the fencing, and we're happy to do that. In addition, she has suggested that you may want more vegetative mitigation for the sunroom. Should you approve it, we hope clearly that you will. Quick calculations, as I've been sitting here, would require about another 10-foot width of buffer along the water side of the property, where there's currently a narrow 5 to 7 foot strip. Beyond that, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you for the summary. Amy, do you have any summary comments for us?
Sure. I'd like to break things up a little bit and go like kind of piece by piece with my recommendations because it's not uniform, if you will, across the board. So first, starting with I think the simplest would be the roof over the existing, over where there's an existing pergola on the north side patio. I would recommend that could be approved if we talked about it on site, any runoff did get treated appropriately, and condition that is not to become living space. The shed is at 52 feet, proposed to be at 52 feet from the edge of the wetland. Here it's kind of marsh because you really don't have, and it's all flood zone. You don't, you have a slope where the coir rolls are, but the lot is pretty low and pretty flat. So the shed is 52 feet, proposed to be 52 feet. It's a 8x12, so 96 square foot shed. My read of the regulation is that no building or addition shall be within 60 feet of a resource area. I don't, in my opinion, think a shed counts as a structure, but not as a building. I think maybe we need to be clear that maybe does building mean house? What does building mean? but they are proposing that at 52 feet away, so it is outside the 50. They are proposing some mitigation for that to widen a section of the planting with some additional Carolina roses, which are native. And the other area of proposed mitigation is proposed to be on top of the fiber rolls where there is some erosion occurring. And in my professional opinion, that is maintenance of a permitted structure. And not to be, you know, that would not be considered mitigation to essentially maintain your fiber rolls. We all know that fiber rolls, they're not permanent, do need some maintenance. So I would recommend a wider buffer strip to make up for that 110 square feet or something that was on top of the fiber rolls, that be added to the planting area that they're proposing for mitigation. In terms of the sunroom, or the proposal for a sunroom, the area is currently approved to be a patio and was a patio before. They did some reconfiguring and now they're asking to close that and make it a sunroom. In the order of conditions, it does specifically state that that is not to become living space. I do believe the commission should stand by that order. I understand that it is not encroaching farther or having more square footage of disturbance in the buffer, but it is a condition on the last permit. And I think the commission's intent was, you know, it prevents further creep into the resource area. Little by little, things get closer and closer, even though this isn't at this time. But however, because it is on the same footprint and because they would treat their roof runoff, Arlene, I'm just going to mute you because I'm getting some feedback for now. Sorry, where was I? If you do see fit to grant a variance because it is on the same square footage or on the same footprint, I do think that you should require 3-to-1 mitigation. The majority of it is in the 0 to 50, tiny piece in the 50 to 100. Because even though it's on the same footprint, it is a new structure, and potentially you could have a better buffer if you were to do something like that. And then in regards to the fence issue, one of the commissioners did notice it and on site today and brought it to my attention. Thank you sorry for the late notice of that, Arlene, but I didn't want to completely blindside you at the meeting. They still do have that wire fence there. So they have the wire fence that's immediately on top of the core logs. And then maybe a foot to 2 feet beyond that landward is this white plasticky picket fence that really encircles the whole yard. And Nikki did pull some photos of some fence remnants, but by no means was the yard like encapsulated by a fence in the past. So what I would recommend is one of two things. Either the commission direct you to file a notice of after the fact notice of intent for that fence with proper mitigation, or it is a structure, it is in violation, it is in the 0 to 50, the commission could issue an enforcement to have that fence removed. So those, and I put in my site summary too. I wanted to check on the fertilization. It doesn't appear like they're treating the lawn. As we noticed on site today, there's moss, there's other things growing in there. It seems like that is in compliance. So I think that wraps up my comments.
Thank you, Amy. Ms. Wilson, did you want to speak to any of those comments before I open up the comments from the commissioners?
I just would say that putting the sunroom on top of the existing patio I understand the commission's concern for creep, but in this particular case, the hardscape is already there. To be honest with you, I don't recall why the commission imposed that order when we were there before to put the sunroof over that area. The order does allow that area to be roofed over. Considering the medical problem, we would really appreciate the commission's forbearance in this particular issue. We're happy to provide the mitigation, and we would work that plan out with Amy. I can, in my thumbnail here is that it would be about 1,400 square feet. And so that indeed would give the commission a much better buffer along the top of that slope than exists now. So I think you would reap some benefit in return for allowing that room.
Okay, thank you. Let me open it up to comments from the commissioners, and I'll start with Mark.
I'm going to pass. I lost signal and I missed most of what was said. I apologize. I'm hoping this stabilizes. Thank you.
Okay. Stan?
Yeah, I agree with most of Amy's comments. I'll kind of go through them. The first one with that roof over the north patio where the barbecues are, I agree with her. As long as it's conditioned not to be a permanent living space, and there's already a pergola there, so I don't, and making sure we have proper drainage there, I don't have a problem with that one. I do have a problem with all the other things, though. Everything's within the 50 or the 60. The shed is, to me, that's a structure within the 60 that, we just tightened up our rules on that, and here we go. I have a problem trying to accept that one. The living space, again, I think part of the problem with that is, and I don't know when the house was, it probably goes back to when the house was built and the patio was permitted. At that time, I don't know, it was long before my time, but part of that's within the 50. And that's probably, and I can't remember exactly either, but I was one of the ones that said it should not be a living space, and I want to stick with that rule. And again, the fence, it's another issue of, this house has been there for a while. The rules should be known by now is what can and can't be done. So I'm really having a problem that fence was put up as well. So those are my comments for now.
Thank you, Stan. John?
Yeah, okay. I'm just going to start with a question, which just looking at the various plans here, I don't see any identification of top of coastal bank, and I'm not sure whether that is an omission here or there actually isn't a coastal bank there. The measurements are from the BVW, but the top of the coastal bank is further inland than that, and none of this indicates that. There is a red line on all these drawings, which is about where I would imagine the top of coastal bank is, but it's not labeled. And so, I don't know, Amy, am I right here that, basically there's a slope about somewhere between where the new fence is and the old chicken wire fence. I would think that would be identified as the top of coastal bank. So what's the deal there?
I'll let Arlene speak to that if she doesn't mind, because it is a slope, but it is still very low and still very much within the floodplain. but and I don't remember, I know we talked about this at the last hearing here when we had the fiber rolls, and I can't remember what was said. So Arlene, if you don't mind.
Sure. The definition of the top of a coastal bank is the first break and slope above the 100-year flood elevation. And the red line, which is actually the top of the coconut fiber rolls here, is well below the flood elevation. So for this site, the top of the coastal bank would actually, in some instances, be across the street. But even across the street, most of the area is too flat to meet the 4-to-1 requirement for having a slope. So here, we would measure from the BBW. The whole site's in the floodplain.
Okay, thank you for that. So other than that, I guess I don't have a lot to add. I am not in favor of undoing what was written in the order of conditions on the original order in 2019. And you're also asking to put a roof on a new part of the patio, and I'm sure that we would put the same condition on there. And my question is, would you be coming back in a year and a half asking to close that in as well? So I have reservations about the plan.
Carolyn?
Do we vote on all or nothing, or can part of this be separated?
Whoever decides to make the motion can determine, they can make a motion to approve all or part or whatever.
Okay.
But I would hope, I mean, before you have motions, you know, chat with the applicant, give them a chance to respond, and we can go back to their, the owner.
I don't see any provisions on the plan for roof runoff over the northern patio. Roof runoff from the, if we approve a roof. Are there any, Ms. Wilson?
The entire patio is tied into this Caltex drainage system, which is on the southerly side of the patio. So yes, it's all taken care of.
How does that work?
The runoff sheet flows into a little gutter on the inside of the sitting wall, and that is piped into this underground dispersal system.
But the northern patio had a barbecue. So where is that channel in that area?
The area that's going to be roofed over is between the barbecue and the pool, Carolyn.
Yeah.
So it sheet flows across the patio in front of the house.
Underneath it, I am a little confused at this.
Over the patio floor.
Over the patio floor, you're going to direct the roof runoff from?
It'll come down off the roof in a gutter along one of the support columns. I think that was the design for the roof that's over the southerly portion.
Okay. Well, that roof runoff bothers me a little bit. I sat on the commission when we approved these plans in 2019. I agree with Stan. I would go by our decision in 2019 that a patio was okay, but no living space there. And I think a shed is a structure. And being 52 feet back is not very far. It's in our 50 to 60 range that we are trying to take care of. So Those are my reservations. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Carolyn. Ernie? You're still muted, Ernie.
I know, I'm just trying to get my mouse on the right button here. I have a couple of comments. One, with respect to the shed, rather than situating where it is presently, just within the 60 actually, why can't we move that up by the street outside the 100? That's a question.
I think this was a preferred location so that it would be relatively invisible from the street. But if the commission wants it to be outside the 60, I guess we will find a spot for it.
Okay. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity to move it closer to the street, even within the 50 to 100, I think, that would be less concerning, given the regulations that we have for structures within the 60-foot. So I would strongly suggest you do that. When we were out there today, it appears that they've already started construction on the patio wall where they want to have the sunroom. Is that right?
I hope not.
Well, there was a hardscape trailer in the driveway for masonry work. There was new concrete poured on top of the knee wall where the existing patio is, and there was a new wall that basically bisected a French door that on the side of the house. So it looks like that's already been started. Which well, I mean, that sort of conflicts a little bit with the comment that we had earlier about, or the comment you made earlier about them putting up the fence without approvals and that sort of a thing. So that's troubling for me.
I do have a photo of that, and I can share it in a moment if that would be helpful for Arlene. I have a photo of that wall. So I know you'll have to go out and see it anyways.
I apparently do.
Yeah. You also mentioned that the medical problem would support our allowing you to create this existing patio into a sunroom. But I don't see that that's necessarily applicable here. I mean, we're also entertaining having a sunroom or a roof over where the pergola is presently, and I mean, just creating a sunroom there, I don't think will necessarily mitigate any concerns with respect to the medical problem. I notice also there's a big patio umbrella next to the pool that's out there, which also would provide shading and everything else. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't necessarily buy that that's a reason for approving the sunroom. Number 4, with respect to the sunroom, yes, we did have the prior restriction on it. But from my way of thinking, if we were to approve taking an existing patio and changing that into a sunroom, all that would do is push the activity that would presently take place on the sunroom last year out onto the lawn and further out into the 50. So aside from the fact that we previously said that this couldn't be moved, couldn't be converted into habitable living space, I think there's reasons for that, and I think, you know, in part that allowing this sunroom, the patio to become a sunroom, would just increase activity further down into the 50, closer to the resource area, which I'm not in favor of. And then the last thing with respect to the fence, I didn't look closely at it, Amy, but I assume that it wasn't in compliance as far as being 6 inches off the ground and all the other requirements that we have for the fence. Is that right?
Correct. It's directly to the ground.
Yeah. So even if they filed an after the fact notice of intent, I don't see how we could possibly approve that without some changes to the fence.
Yeah, it definitely fragments. I mean, between their planting bed and the slope itself and all the native plantings are, it really fragments that little bit of habitat that they do have there. So I just don't think, even if it was raised, I don't know if it could be in compliance because it's a structure in the 0 to 50.
Yeah, I agree with it. Okay, that's it. Those are the only comments I have. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ernie. Let me circle back. Mark, did you want to have any comments at this point?
Regarding the shed and the 60-foot buffer that we've talked about in the past, this is a situation where I don't see where the shed has any impact on anything because there's still plenty of space to get around it. It is outside the 50, so I don't see any harm in that being there. Regarding the cover over the patio, whether it's a pergola or a solid roof isn't going to make any difference. You've got the same volume of water, so there's already a system in place to contain that, and I don't see a problem there. The issue of living space, to me, is not even a discussion. Very simply, whether you sleep there or sit there and watch the birds or whatever you do, it doesn't matter what you do. Once you put a roof over it, it's an enclosed space. Whether it has windows around it or screens, it's still an enclosed area. So, to me, it's not even an item. The fence, I just saw that photo of the fence, and I don't really have much to say about that, but that's about all I can add to the two big issues, the patio and the shed. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark. Myself, I don't really have any additional comments to make. I agree with most of the comments made previously. And so what I'd like to do is, I guess, ask Ms. Wilson if you would like to come back at a later date, or do you want to try to get some approvals tonight? What's your preference here?
Sorry about that. I guess since we're going to have to do something about that fence by way of a separate application anyway, I would like to see what we can get approved tonight, and we'll lump the rest of the stuff together in a separate NOI.
Okay, that sounds like a good approach. Any comments from members of the audience? Okay, so I think what
Hold on
I'm
one
hearing
second, Mr. Chair. I'll just say it, if you don't mind, for the edification of everybody, because we do have people on phones. If you do wish to speak for any of these items when you're called on, it is *6 if you're on a cell phone to unmute yourself.
Thanks, Amy. I should have done that. So it seems like there's not a lot of support for the sunroom at the southern patio, and there's reasonable support for the northern patio change, as well as a shed, although it seems like most people are favoring having the shed pulled out of the 60. And so I think that we can certainly approve those two features tonight, I believe. So, Carolyn, do you have a comment?
I do have a question. If we do not approve the sunroom, but we previously did approve a raised patio, I'd like to ask Ms. Wilson, how do they propose to get to that patio and out of that patio, since right now there is a ceiling wall that encloses the entire patio, goes from one of the walls of the house around to attach again to the next wall?
There's a set of stairs off that patio between the area that they want to enclose and the pool. So they get down onto the lawn area. It's sort of in the middle. And then there's another set of stairs near the barbecue. Um,
So the patio is going to be the height of that wall.
The patio already exists, Carolyn.
Inside the wall.
Yeah, and it's about 1, 2, 3 steps. So that's probably about 30 inches above the elevation of the lawn. And it is enclosed with a sitting wall that's above the patio floor level.
Yeah, I didn't see any, if it's 3 steps, I didn't see any access to the patio.
There was no means of accessing outside of that. It's a complete wall whole way around.
Can I chime in here for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
They had clearly built a cinder block extension of the existing wall almost all the way up to the house and almost butting up against an existing either door or glass extension to a door. Clearly, it is not intended to remain in that configuration. They're probably going to take out the existing window or door or whatever it is and extend that wall all the way to the house. That seems to be the plan. But the issue here is construction has already taken place without a permit there, it's clear. Not only building a cinder block wall to enclose the proposed sunroom, that is a cinder block extension to the existing stone veneered wall that encloses most of the patio. They have also cut the top of the existing stone veneered wall, clearly in preparation for a sill that will form the basis for the proposed sunroom. So my thought is, regardless of what we decide, some permitting is required here because they're either going to have to take apart the work they've already done, which, seeing as that is work within the 50 they need a permit for. They should have had a permit to do the construction that they already did. So it's a little bit of a puzzle here, in my view. And I think Ms. Wilson probably should go and view the site to see what has actually been done. You don't apparently have not seen that, and they've already started construction there. There's no doubt about that. And I would like to see a proposal about what the next step is here.
I do think that's a smart decision. There's a lot that started out there, Arlene.
I clearly should not have listened to my client in this particular instance, and I apologize. I do need to go out. As we're talking about this, I really don't want the solar panels to get lost in the shuffle here. Those are going on the existing roof, and I would hope that if you approve any portions of this project tonight, you could approve those.
We could, so the commission knows, we could separate that and do that with an administrative review. If you're not taking down any trees and you're doing it on the existing roof, Arlene, we can clean this up by doing it that way if the commission sees appropriate.
Amy, in that case, would we just wait on the other features until later, the shed, the northern patio, and just request that you approve the solar panels administratively?
That's fine. One thing you can do, yes. So yes, we would continue all the other items. It is up to you, and you can do it tonight or next time we meet. Well, we noticed the violation, if you will, of the fence. So we do have a certain amount of time if you wanted to issue a fine, and you know, that will come back to the come back to us next time anyway for discussion. But now would be that time if you wanted to take that step about the fence.
Thank you, Amy. The fence is a large concern to me, just because with previous hearings on this property, we've really tried to protect that top of the bank as much as possible, and there it is, basically at the upper end of the resource area. So I'm very concerned about the fence, as well as the work on the existing patio. So I do think a fine is in order. I'm probably most troubled by the contractors. That I just, this just keeps coming up, and I can see property owners at times just not being familiar with what the regulations might be, but contractors, I just don't know how you could imagine installing that fence without a permit. So I would like to hear some discussion on the fine. If anybody just wants to speak up, please go ahead.
Brad, I too feel that there's potential issues here that would warrant 2 fines. One for the fence and also for that raw wall that's been constructed around the existing patio. Obviously, when the patio was constructed, and as Ms. Wilson mentioned, there is a system that's in place to capture runoff from that patio. With the wall that's there now, that runoff won't occur. It might drain through to some extent the blocks that are there, but it certainly will hinder the access to the runoff system that was hopefully is already installed there. So I would be in favor of issuing 2 fines. I think, Amy, if you go back out to the site, you can find out who the contractors were. Their van is still in the driveway there. And I would also like to see a fine for the contractor as well as the property owner at this point.
I would have to check. I know the property owner does have a business, and I do not know if the contractor and the owner are one and the same, but we can figure that out.
As I recall, it was the SBR improvements or something like that was the name on the van that was there.
So I have a question about the wall still, though, because included in the submission were what I take to be the drawings that were submitted in 2019 of the new patio that was proposed then. And that includes, it appears to me anyway, a wall enclosing that patio. So that wall, for the most part, isn't new, right? That wall was part of the 2019 or 2018 submission, except for the part that was closing off access from the rest of the patio.
Correct.
So whatever we approved in 2019 should have included provisions for drainage around that wall, or taking into account the existence of that wall. Is that correct?
That was permitted, correct me if I'm wrong, to be a roof structure, so we had drainage for that, not necessarily the patio. Let me pull up the last order, I'm sorry.
There was actually drainage that was included in the original order to reconstruct that patio and wall. And it would still, it should still function with the roof over that section of the patio.
Yeah, John, to your point, we don't know what the prior approved wall was conditioned for, whether there were scuppers built into it to allow the water to drain off of the patio or what. Obviously, the wall that's here now is a brand new wall from the patio all the way up. So I'm not convinced that the original wall we approved is still there or was even retained at all.
Okay, well, that's a question. I was assuming, looking at that was the wall that was there from 2019, and what they did was extend it toward the house and cut part of the top off of the wall to make room for a sill. But so that's a question again to Ms. Wilson. did they tear down the existing wall and build a new one? Or is the one that they're building on now the original wall that has been there for a couple of years?
Without going out to actually look, I am loath to put forth anything.
Okay.
We were supposed to rebuild the wall around the patio. I thought the last time I had been out there that that had been done. I don't know what they've done to it since.
Okay. I think we need more clarity here. We're not getting anywhere.
Okay, so I think we're moving towards a continuance on the project with support for Amy's administrative approval for the solar panels. And I think I'm hearing that there's interest in fines for the fence with both the property owner and the contractor. For the wall around the southern patio, I'm not sure if that's just a fine for the property owner at this point. I don't know if we have enough information to go there. So if
I find if I find if there's been work other than the fence that has gone on other, or if I find that there's been work other than the fence without a permit, if you can give me the authority to issue that fine if you want to do that.
Okay, I think that's reasonable. Would someone like to put forth a motion?
I would move to continue the project.
And that date, I would suggest at least a month out because we are absolutely slammed the next meeting.
We'll need a month anyway if we're going to have to revise the plan.
So the, Mark, maybe your motion would be move to continue to March 17th.
That was perfect.
Amy, I actually have a conflict on the 17th. What's the next date beyond that?
It's the first Wednesday of April. Hold on. It would be April 7th.
Could we make it April 7th then?
Okay, well, to move this along, I'm going to second Mark's motion to continue this hearing until April 7th. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay, starting with Mark.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
This does not include penalties.
It wasn't, so we're going to fly through this and address the fines after this.
Thank you. Aye.
Ernie?
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion to continue carries 6-0. And I will motion now that we support Amy's administrative review approval of the solar panels and the issuance of a fine for the fence installation for both the property owner and the contractor, and that we ask Amy to investigate the potential for fines for the work on the patio. Do I hear a second, please?
I second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, hearing that, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay, starting with Mark.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
Myself, Brad Pitt, aye. The motion carries 6-0. All right, thank you, and we'll see you again in early April. Okay, next on the agenda, we have a notice of intent for 17 Bayview Road in map 7 parcel J6-2. It's a proposal for land management, including invasive species removal and landscape improvements. Do we have a representative here tonight to discuss the project?
Good evening. For the record, Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering. With me is Katrine Higgins from Wilkinson Ecological Design. I'm going to share my screen. You're familiar with the site across the street. We came before you about 5 months ago for the boathouse across Snow Inn Road. There is a coastal bank that is between that house and Snow Inn Road. We're showing that in green, and the 50 is in red, and the 100-foot buffer to that coastal bank is in blue. The site is developed for anybody that had a chance to go out and visit the site. Work is taking place outside of the 100-foot buffer. We had the contractor install a silt fence and a construction fence along that buffer. We also came before you for an administrative review for construction access along the 10-foot way on the northern end of the property. The project before you now is some minor landscape improvements with steppers and some regrading, mostly within the lawn area of the 50 to 100-foot buffer. Most of this project entails invasive removal of invasive trees and management of invasive plants and a planting plan. There are some minor modifications to the retaining wall as it meets the proposed at-grade granite steps on either side, and also at the northern end of the wall to the west side of Snow Inn Road. So with that, I will turn it over to Katrine to review her portion of the land management plan.
Thanks, Sean. Good evening. So like Sean mentioned, we're proposing invasive plant management and native plant restoration throughout the 0 to 50 and the 50 to 100 of this property. We submitted a protocol, invasive management protocol, that kind of outlined what we proposed to do. And just to take you quickly through our proposal, virtually all of the vegetation in the area is non-native and invasive. There's bittersweet, ivy, vine honeysuckle, locust, euonymus, shrub honeysuckle, privet, and barberry. And as we saw when we were visiting the site with Amy, there's a lot of autumn sweet clematis, which is just growing actually in the lawn, and it's really shows how aggressive that species can be in the right conditions. And so in addition to the non-native material, there's some native vegetation primarily in the tree layer where there's holly, cherry, and cedar growing throughout the area, some really nice hollies in particular. So we're proposing to remove the non-native species, and also in our work protocol on page 5, we talk about pruning for health of the black cherry. There's a really large and significant cherry. We have a photo of it in its glory in the summer on page 4. It's quite impressive looking. If you were out there recently, you might have seen that one of the largest limbs has already fallen. So we're just proposing to kind of, we go into some detail about the pruning, but just to prune it for health so that it can remain in place and you know, survive for the long term. And in addition, it's important to point out, I think, that within this work, we're proposing to remove 880 square feet of existing lawn, and that is kind of along the edge of right in there. Exactly, thanks, Sean. Right in there, there'd be 880 square feet of lawn removal. And then, of course, that whole area would be replanted, and Stimson provided a planting plan, and you'll see on, like we're seeing here right now, it's quite a dense planting of holly, serviceberry, white oak, beech plum, clethra, inkberry holly, bayberry, and viburnum, some really nice big shrubs will go in that area, as well as herbaceous forbs and grasses in that hatched area where the lawn is being removed. And then in addition, outside of that area and within jurisdiction, any existing area of lawn will be a microclover lawn right in that area there. And with that, this is just all this work is to provide a thick native buffer for improved stormwater function on the site, and also, of course, for improved habitat available for wildlife. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you both. Amy, do you have any summary comments for us?
Sure. In general, the planting plan looks pretty good. It is a pretty dense planting plan, and just want to make sure, because it is so dense, want to make sure the spacing is correct. I'd rather give things a tiny bit more space and let them grow if you think it is too dense. But I do like it. I did have some conversation with Wilkinson. They had conversation with Stimson, who did the landscape plan, that I think a few of the plants that were on there, though they are native, this is not really their ideal home in this type of environment. It's kind of dry and sunny, and a lot of salt in the air. We did approve it across the street, the sweet pepper bush, and I guess if the owners really want it, which is the conversation, the email that I received, is that this is kind of what they want to stick with. I'd be okay with approving it, provided that if they fail, that they have to be replanted with something a little bit more site appropriate from our native plant list. And that would be, so the plants I'm particularly just a little concerned about would be the sweet pepper bush and the arrowwood viburnum. I don't know what that was from.
I think various people need to mute before you proceed, because everybody needs to mute.
If you're not speaking, please mute. Thank you. Let's see. My only other question, so I've no suggestions other than that on the planting plan, that we just condition if we need a 90% survival rate, and if that doesn't happen, then we need to get replanted. We are not allowing, wouldn't be allowing any chemical application or fertilizers in general in this area. How wide is that path? Your plan, I didn't scale it off, and I should have. We typically do condition that a path is to be no more than 4 feet wide, particularly through the 0 to 50. Understanding that, this is kind of a different situation where you have snow and road between the site and the resource. However, we typically allow paths to be 4 feet in width. The stone steps by themselves, I don't see necessarily as a structure, so long as there's grass in between. And then the walls right on the street, technically that would be a structure in the 50, but I think all the other improvements that you're making by adding all this species diversity in an area that was pretty much just invasive or really nothing, there's not a lot there. I do think that that could make up for it. Plus, again, it's really right along the street, but I am interested in how wide that path is.
I'd say it's 6 feet. There is an existing opening right now and an existing path, and I'm not quite sure what the existing width is right there at the street.
Okay. That being said, I would recommend approval, potentially bringing that walkway to the 4 foot width to still allow them access.
Thank you, Amy. All right, well, let me start with comments and questions from the commissioners. I'll begin with Mark.
In short, I agree with everything Amy said. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Stan?
No comments, Mark. Brad.
John?
Yeah, I just have one question, which is, what is microclover sod? Is it pure clover, or is it just a more or less conventional sod with some clover mixed in.
Sorry. I believe it's similar to what was approved at other projects in Harwich. It's the whole effort is to put the microculver puts the nitrogen into the soil and almost fertilizes the lawn naturally, so that you don't need any kind of chemicals, and it looks great, and it's good for the habitat. But I'm sorry, I thought it was just seed. I don't know if does the plan specify sod? I thought it was just a seed mix.
The plans
Again,
calls
this
it
was not our plan.
clover sod.
Sod, okay. Yeah, you can. It's the Black Beauty microclover sod. It comes in seed and sod. They're specifying the sod just for a quicker establishment.
We can provide the specification if you'd like.
I believe it was used at Witchmere, wasn't it?
Yes.
They
Yeah.
used seed, though, I believe, not sod. I'm not
Okay.
positive.
Yeah, and they referred to it differently. It may be the same thing, but I don't
Player's
recall them
best.
So that's what this is, Player's Best,
Player's Best. It's that brand, correct?
which is a seed mix. It's not just, I see. Okay. Thank you. I generally support this. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. Carolyn?
I am fine with everything, thank you.
Ernie?
Good. Yeah, I'm fine with everything. I agree with Amy that the path should be 4 feet because we pretty consistently enforced that requirement on other projects that we've had. And one other question, are there any drainage pipes flowing from this property out into the harbor on the Snowing Road and out to the adjoining lot that they have and out to the harbor?
No, not that we were aware of.
Okay, good. I would ask that you make sure there aren't any that are there, because we've seen them on other sites north of this that are where we've had pipes that come straight into the harbor from various projects that are landward of that. Thank you.
We can confirm that.
Okay, good. That's the only concern I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Ernie. I have no additional comments, and I'll ask if there's any comments from members of the audience. All right, seeing none. Any last comments from commissioners or any other folks? All right, seeing none, I'd like to request a motion from one of the commissioners now.
I'll move to approve the notice of intent for 17 Bayview Road, map 7, parcel J62, with the one change that the path width be limited to 4 feet.
Could I have a second, please?
Second.
All right, seconded by Mark. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Starting
Hey,
with
Brad,
Mark.
I got a question first.
Sure.
Amy's condition regarding the plantings of at least 90% success rate should be in this.
What was the question, John? Stan?
Amy's condition, the condition that the plantings would have a 90% survival rate, otherwise replanting would be required with.
Okay. You're asking that included as a condition.
Yes.
Okay.
So I accept that as an amendment to the motion.
Thank you, John. Okay, let's proceed with a roll call. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay, starting with Mark.
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Carolyn,
Aye.
Ernie,
Aye.
myself, Brad Chase, aye. The motion carries 6-0. All right, thank you very much. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Have a great night.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a notice of intent for 18 Captain's Todd Way, map 103, parcel W1-21. It's a proposal for a new dwelling. Do we have a representative here tonight for the project?
Yes, Mr. Chairperson, John O'Reilly, project engineer working on behalf of the Allens. Mark and Briella Allen are also on the call. We were here 2 weeks ago, I believe, and we reviewed the changes that we had made to the plan, the shifting of the house to the west, the pulling of all.
I apologize, John. I think I muted your phone. I thought there was feedback there. Sorry about that.
Am I here now? Can you
Well,
hear me okay?
I didn't realize you were both on the computer and on your phone. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I should have let you know. We were here a few weeks ago to review the changes and the building reductions and the for the single-family home. If you remember, we shifted the dwelling to the west about 15 feet and pulled it forward or to the south, and realigned the stairway and pathway on the back side of the property to keep all alterations outside the 60-foot buffer. They took your comments and some suggestions with regards to no fertilizer within the buffer zone, and they certainly, I did pass this on to Amy earlier in the week, that they certainly would be willing to do that. That's not an issue, as it's pretty standard. They would also like to offer, we talked about the lawn last time, and I did have a chance to talk to Amy about it, and she gave me some information on the clover seed, which was briefly talked about at that last hearing. And they would be willing to plant that in the front yard. Again, that lawn area is well outside the 100-foot buffer, but they are willing to do the clover seed, which again, as was described earlier, will not require fertilizer. The remaining plantings outside of the lawn and within the limit of work line are all to be planted with native species. We have a mixture of large high-bush blueberry and mountain laurels, as well as some arrowwood, I believe, within that area. They did not. They thought really hard about the suggestion that they restrict the entire property from any further clearing or non-building or non-alteration, and they just don't see. They don't want to do that. Certainly because of the value of the land that they are agreed to pay the owners of this property, and they just feel that, you know, we have pulled the house further away. We're providing a 60-foot unaltered buffer to a resource, and we have houses all around us, and this is one of the last lots in this area to be a vacant lot to be built on Long Pond in this general area. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions, but obviously, you know, the Allens would like to move this along, but are willing to listen and answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy, do you have a summary for us, please?
Sure. I'll keep it kind of short and sweet with the condition that the entirety of the property be subject to a no fertilizer or chemical application. I would recommend approval of the project as it's now presented, or at the which is the same plan that you saw at the last meeting in regards to where all the structures are. Some of that area is outside the 100-foot, so I do see that as some mitigation there. Just for the commission's edification, I actually looked up Players Best, the composition of it, just the other day, and it's primarily rye and fescues, which are native grasses. There is some Kentucky blue grass in there, but then it is the microclover, which the microclover binds the nutrients so that it provides its natural fertilizer for the other things. So people we've known, well, the Witchmere in particular, who've had it for about 2 years now, are very happy with it. They use it for their wedding lawn. So I think, would we want it in the 0 to 50? No, but in the front of your house, I don't see the issue there. So with just with that condition, 90% survival rate on the new plantings. Anything else that ever you want to do on the 100-foot buffer, you got to come back to us. It sounds like, the Allens have been here every step of the way, so they understand that. But with that condition that no fertilizers or chemicals are on the property, I would recommend approval. I feel like they've left the most important part, which is closest to the BBW. They've left that alone. And this area up closer to the street, it's already a little bit, habitat wise is already a little bit impacted just by proximity of the street itself and proximity of other homes up closer to the street. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Amy. All right, well, let's go ahead with comments and questions from the commissioners, starting with Mark.
In short, I agree with what Amy just said, so I'm all set. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Stan?
Yeah, I agree with Amy's comments. I have nothing further.
Okay, John?
Yeah, I have no further comments. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Carolyn?
I agree with it, what Amy said, and I want to thank you for being so careful not to do anything in the 0 to 50.
Okay, Ernie?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with what Amy's proposed. I assume the Allens are in agreement with the no fertilizer at all on this particular lot.
No, it's part of the order of conditions that we're just texting back and forth, and they're okay with including that as part of the order of conditions.
Okay, good. In that case, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, any comments from members of the audience? Any additional comments from members of the commission? All right, well, seeing none, we can entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve the new dwelling at 18 Captain Todd Way with the conditions that we have discussed.
All right, thank you. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
All right, seconded by Mark. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll have a roll call. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Starting with Mark.
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Carolyn?
Aye.
Ernie?
I'll say aye, and congratulations on this one
the Allens on this.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries 6-0. Thank you all for participating and helping us go back and forth on this. Have a good evening.
We're excited. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a notice of intent for Zero Old Campground Road, map 30, parcels C6, C7, C8, and C9. It's a proposal for a new dwelling. And do we have a representative here tonight for the project?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is John O'Reilly again. I do not know if Lee Colton, one of the applicants, is online. I don't see him, but he is still traveling. We had met with you folks 2 weeks ago, and you gave us quite a bit of input and comments. And what we've done is submitted a revised plan, and I've given you a summary cover page, if you will, or a memo outlining the changes. The first is that we've eliminated the paved portion of the driveway, and we are going with a gravel, so it is a pervious structure. We have pulled the limit of work line in on the north and west sides of the building. We did review that with the applicants, and we made a significant change on the limit of work on the north side. We pulled it in, so there's about 30 feet of area between the north side of the house and the limit of work, and that will allow us to install a septic system and grade and have an area to enjoy the lot in. We have eliminated the fire pit on the south side, and this area will be used for a family garden. We have added planting notes and species type and size and planting schedule, which will be over the entire area of the existing vehicle tracks as they're on the property. We had originally shown it just to be seeded and left alone, and so we added quite a bit of shrubs to the area, a mixture of high bush, mountain laurel, and sweet pepper bush. And then a significant change we did is that a couple suggestions was to look at a different type of sewage system. And so what we've done is we've added an enhanced treatment of an IA technology, a fast unit within the septic system. So we're now going to be looking at a better treatment of the effluent prior to discharge into the ground. I realized after I had submitted the plans to Amy, if you remember, she had some questions on the BBWs, the isolated BBWs. And the first one in off of Old Campground, the larger one that's right above where it says parcels C6, C7, C8, C9, that is well over your local requirements and is subject to protection under your local act. The two smaller ones to the east of that are not. They're less than the 3,000 square feet. In fact, I think they're between 1,000 and 1,200 square feet, and they are separated from the larger bog. We did go back and check that. I do still show the buffer zones from them. Amy had asked me to correct that, and I neglected to do that. So I apologize for that oversight. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. It is a very difficult site, and I'm hoping that we've made the changes that the commission feels that are appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy, do you have a summary for us?
Sure. First is a question that I apologize might catch John O'Reilly a little bit off guard. When Matt from your office did the wetland delineation, I don't know when he did it, Did you guys investigate whether or not these isolated wetlands had any vernal pool characteristics?
I doubt very much unless there was standing. I'll have to go back and look. Usually if there's standing water in a low point like this, we would look for signs of it. I think these were dry at the time,
Yeah.
but I'd have to go back and check with Matt on that.
I'm very sorry for bringing that up at the meeting. Usually I try to get comments to people ahead of time. That just leads to my comments in general that I guess I have less of an issue with where the house, or about the house, as how to get to the house. When I was reviewing the plan, you know, the driveway, currently there are vehicle tracks there, which are not that frequently used. I mean, they are used, but this is going to be a gravel, very long driveway between really a couple of wetland areas. And I do see impacts to habitat, which are interests in the Act and our regulations. I do think that the long driveway in particular could have a real impact to wildlife habitat on this site. And that's kind of what brought up my comment about whether or not they're vernal or not. And we may or may not need to know that definitively, John. I just wanted to bring that up. I did take a look also. I was just doing that right now. So are these lots assessed as buildable? Lots C6, C7, and 3/8 are only a couple thousand a piece. I couldn't find an assessment for C9. And if they're not, I'm just curious why they would not be assessed as such, if you had any clarity on that. And again, I just looked this up.
You're right. You are catching me off guard.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. My understanding is the owner, Mr. Coulson, had this lot surveyed and found that the deeds that he owned constitute the lot boundaries that you have presented in front of you. Now, we didn't do the survey. He had another firm do that, but he has brought us a deed and a plan that shows this is what he owns, and that we're proposing a plan on it. I think the buildability of this individual parcels, I don't know how that would impact these areas. I don't know how that would impact how they're assessed. Obviously, if the decision is you know, whether they're buildable or not, is whether or not the lot has an ability to get a building permit. And your approval is one of them, you know, one of the aspects of that building permit.
Yeah, it's more so that I'll go back and talk to our assessor as well. And again, only 3 out of the 4 lots did I just find any information on in terms of assessments. Usually for lots to be assessed at a few $1,000s, there was something in the past that kind of made that happen. So I have no problem helping to kind of look at that. Getting back to just the wetlands though, piece is, you know, unfortunately I can't, what it comes down to is I can't recommend approval of this project. I outlined it in my summary comments to the commissioners, and I'll happily share it with John. I do see this project under the Act and the bylaw and our regs as having an impact to wildlife habitat. A portion of the project actually is, you know, on what is technically a coastal bank, and within the 50-foot buffer partially to that. That's up closer to the house. There's going to be some alteration there, minor grading. Let's see, you know, and so that in the 0 to 50, that's our no disturb zone. But primarily for me, again, against the Act and the bylaws, I don't think this project meets the standards for wildlife habitat, and I'm sorry.
All right, thank you, Amy. Let's go ahead and proceed with comments and questions from commissioners, starting with Mark.
To Amy's point regarding the location of the driveway, to me, that's the lesser of the evils as far as accessibility to the rest of the property. And with full respect to her opinion, I would respectfully disagree with her finding, and I would support the project as it lies.
All right, thank you, Mark. Stan.
I guess the question that Amy raises about the assessment as buildable lots, I think that's a big question. I mean, is that, Amy, I guess, is if they're not considered buildable, you can't build it, right? Or am I missing something?
Well, the assessment is one thing, and buildability or our decision can be something else. So this property is 4 lots, right? It's lots C6, C7, C8, and C9. I quickly looked up the assessor's cards for C6, C7, and C8. They were respectively assessed between $4,500 and $6,800 per each of those 3 lots was assessed between that. I don't have C9, it's not coming up with a number, but if those lots have been combined and are creating a buildable lot, that's fine. So a lot, just because it was determined at some point, we're seeing this, Nikki and I are getting a million questions right now about this property on Bank Street, just for example, 262 Bank Street. Commission denied the permit, determined it to be unbuildable in the 1980s. It's for sale right now. A lot of people are asking what they can build on it. Technically, they have the right to submit application to try to build on that. So assessment, I'm just curious how those numbers came out for these properties, and I can look farther into that. So it is very possible that the combination of these lots created a buildable lot. That's all I've got to say.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to clarify that. Other than that, I kind of go along with your comments. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Stan. John.
Yeah, okay. I'm actually struggling to understand the plan, and not even what you're proposing to build there, just what the plan says about what is currently there. I mean, most of it is pretty straightforward, but the planned driveway, the planned gravel drive, it appears to me, and please correct me here because I'm not confident of this. I mean, basically, a lot of it runs between 2 lines identified as 100-foot buffer. So I assume the northerly of those 2 lines is the buffer to the old bog to the north, and the southerly of those 2 lines, which is which does strange things that I don't entirely understand. There's wetland of some sort to the west and to the south. Is that correct? And then, well, let me just finish, and then John, you can help me out here. Then you identify the coastal bank, which basically circumscribes the area that's going to be built on. And the part that is of interest to me at the moment is the part on the western side there that goes roughly north to south. And it defines an area between the 100-foot line to the north and the 50-foot line to the south. But what is the nature of that coastal bank? Does that mean that the drive there that appears to be sort of in the clear is actually just going up coastal bank? And the coastal bank is everything between where you identify that line to the west side of the building site, all the way to the west of there, that whole thing is coastal bank? So what is being proposed here is building a drive on coastal bank almost all the way up to the house. Is that correct?
John, I don't want to cut you off with.
I'll stop now and see what you have to say.
Okay. Sorry for stepping on your talk there. The driveway comes off Old Campground Road, and it starts on Upland, begins its travel towards the lot, towards the east. It does get below the 100-year floodplain. There is not a bank on the western side of the lot. As you traverse the driveway heading east, you have the bog to the north, which we're about 60 feet away, and a bog to the south, which we're about 70 feet away. So we are directing the driveway through the 250-foot areas from the bog to the north and the south. When you get to the outer peninsula, you're right. The coastal bank, which is a function of the flood zone, does exist on the western-facing slope of where the house is considered. So I don't know where the bank would end, because there's not a typical coastal bank, if you will, because we're inland wetlands, but we are traveling through a coastal bank at some point with the driveway. Yes.
So Old Campground Road is not in the flood zone. As you go in that proposed driveway from Old Campground Road, at some point you go over a high point of the knoll or something, and the drive goes down around where that swale is identified, the second one in. And in there is the flood zone, and the coastal bank is a coastal bank because. How's that?
Yes, I'm sorry, I stepped on you again. Yes,
not a problem.
The coastal bank is the 11-foot contour, and once you get off Old Campground and get about 70 feet into the property, you are getting into areas subject to coastal storm flow until you get beyond the 11-foot contour on the western side of the outer peninsula. One of the performance standards for a coastal bank are twofold. You know it well. One is nourishment, and the other one is a vertical buffer to prevent storm damage. So our rationale is that obviously this bank is not a sediment source to any coastal beach or dune system, because just of where it's located. So it's more of a stability of the bank, so you're not creating a situation where you destabilize the bank sloughs, and you're creating more areas subject to flooding. So what we're basically doing is mimicking the drive. If you look at where the 11-foot contour crosses the driveway, we are basically matching, the existing 11-foot contour. So we're not altering the top or the upper boundary of that bank. And by creating the driveway, and once it is vegetated, the utilities are in shoulders, it's going to continue to function as a vertical buffer to a bank. So as far as those two performance standards, that's, I might have said more than you wanted, John, but that's my response.
So, in other words, another thing that needs to be read off this plan is particularly in that area where the drive crosses from an elevation that is maybe around 9 feet before the second swale. It crosses over to where you've identified the coastal bank at 11 feet. You're actually building up, there's fill going in there to build that drive area up there. You're not getting completely out of the flood zone, but you're building it up a foot or two. Is that correct?
Actually, we're not building it up anywhere close to a foot. Well, building it up more than 2 feet. If you follow, now the proposed contours on this driveway, and I can give you a blown up version of this if we are continuing. But if you follow starting at Old Campground Road, we have an existing grade of 12.4. It's 12.4 right at the edge of the road, opposite the mouth of the driveway. You have a proposed grade of 12 as you get into the lot, and that matches the 12-foot contour, the existing 12-foot contour. You have the 11, again, we're trying to match the 11 at that point, so we're not changing the flood boundary on this property. You then go down to 10, and we match the 10. We drop down to elevation 8, right between the T of foot and W of wide. That's an elevation of 8. We are holding that elevation about 8.5. So we're elevated the driveway about 6 to 8 inches above the existing grade. And then again, as you travel east, our 9-foot contour proposed and existing are in the same general area, very little change in grade. We are making some changes to the grade here by creating a low point prior to you start climbing the hill to where the house is situated. So if anything, we're removing existing material to add a little bit more of depression so we can control the water generated from the driveway. And then again, going up the hill, I think you'll see that we try to match the 11-foot contour as best we can. And then once you get above the floodplain, you can see that it starts, we're not matching the existing grade as well, because now we're trying to get to the house and have a manageable driveway slope or grade.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess I understand what's going on there a little better. I don't know what difference it makes, but so Amy, just to ask you, is part of your concern what's going on there in the transition area there before you get to the top of Coastal Bank in the drive?
Hang on 1 second, sorry. I guess, I mean, I'm not too concerned with storm damage prevention and flood control. I would be, you know, changing of grading, though it is minor here. Potentially could have a chance of increasing of run, well, per our bylaw, it talks about a coastal bank, and it says may serve as a vertical buffer because of its height and stability, which protects upland areas from storm damage prevention and flooding. Activities shall not increase erosion of the bank either from stormwater runoff, brush cutting, or other means. So see a little bit of potential for runoff here. It is going to be gravel. Again, my main reason for not being in support of the project is the fragmentation of the wildlife habitat.
Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, thanks, John. Carolyn?
Amy, well, what's your guess about the property due south? I know where this bog is delineated, but is all of this area above silk fence erosion control detail, that comment, is all of that bog, or is it just the little area that's got bog symbols?
The wetlands, I don't know exactly the lines, Carolyn. They're just, the bog symbols are really just to show the edge of BBW, to my knowledge. It doesn't show the extent of it by any means. Don't
Because it's
know how.
to me that the driveway fragmenting the natural habitat would be affected, would be considered different if the lot to the south could be built upon right around there.
That I don't know. I don't know which lot exactly that is. I know we permitted a few other projects on this road, but I don't know if I can't speak to how, if that bog edge of old bog kind of goes more towards the road or not, or stops right there. Oh, John O'Reilly might have a point.
Thank you. I just want to clarify it. We were in front of you last May with the two properties to the south of this property. At flag number 1, the bog turns directly south and does not travel west towards the old campground. It comes back towards the south, away from the locust property. And then from flag number 1 up through flag number 7D at the top of the page, where it traverses the entire north, east, and south of this local property. That's all one bog. It is connected. It's a very large network of bogs that eventually gets, I think we talked about it last time, I think it gets the Herring River.
What was the second number you gave?
I'm sorry. The second flag is at the top of 28D, 27D. That line on the north. Yeah, just north of Old Campground.
Oh, whoa. That's all one bog.
Yeah, there are some dikes in that area that break up, and that's where you have flags of B, C, D. Is that they're broken by dikes and ditches, and that's how we flag them out in the field. But they're all part of one. They're all hydraulically connected, and they're all part of one overgrown, abandoned bog area.
That's a big wetland.
Yes.
No, that there is extensive wetlands, and I think I was very clear of that. I'm
Yeah.
trying to hide that.
No, I know you weren't, but as John pointed out, there's a lot on this map. The driveway is 12 feet wide. You have to have 12 feet?
I believe the fire department would like 12 feet, and with a 14-foot cleared brush horizontally and vertically. So that's where we came up with 12. Obviously, if the width of the driveway comes into play, we could check with the fire department to make sure that they would be okay with a 10-foot wide driveway, but that's probably as narrow as we'd want to go.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Carolyn. Ernie?
Yeah, it's a lot to digest with this particular lot. John, the last meeting, I know one of the other major changes you've included in this is the change to this IA septic system. Would you explain that to us, and how effective is it as opposed to a Title V?
Sure. Well, it's in layman's terms, it's a wastewater treatment plant that's designed for residential flow. So everything is sized down, but the science is relatively the same. They enrich the wastewater with oxygen and then starve the wastewater with oxygen as well as, that's more of a chemical process, but as well as filtering the effluent. So the effluent, the FAST system we're proposing is approved to provide a total nitrogen of 19 parts per million. An average or a conventional septic system is somewhere between 35 and above, depending on flow and strength of waste. But the number that everyone uses is 35 for raw wastewater through a conventional septic system. And the FAST unit is approved for 19. So you're looking at, I think it's about a 40% reduction of wastewater strength as far as nitrogen. You also have the ability for these treatment units to take care of oil and grease, take care of, make sure that the effluent is not as strong as waste, not as strong as a typical wastewater coming out of the conventional, as far as the amount of bugs within the column, and then also removes suspended solids quite well, which ensures the longevity of a leaching facility. So we operate at quite a few of these for residential flow, and they seem to be working pretty well. And actually, Mr. Colton, where they live now, actually has a small treatment facility for their flow. So he was quite knowledgeable about the process. And typically, when you bring up the process of treatment, the applicant or the owner is very terrified of costs and operation and problems. Wherein Mr. Colton has had experience with them and had no real issue in offering it to the committee as part of their mitigation package.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's helpful. So with respect to maintenance, assuming that Mr. Colton doesn't own this property forever and ever, how much is involved in that?
You mean is maintenance of the technology? Yep. Typically, for permits being issued nowadays, you're required to do an O&M checkup of the system 4 times a year, and that's based on year-round use of the house. So the 4 quarters, you visit the site. What we end up doing is we visit the site, make sure the technology is working properly. There's no high water signals or alarms and no signs of alarms. Put the system through its paces to make sure everything is working properly, then take a sample of the effluent and have that run through a lab. Now, if it's a seasonal property, boards of health tend to allow for 2 times a year, a spring and fall visit. But the way the regulations are set up within the DEP, the goal with DEP is to have these systems up and running, so they need minimal oversight. And I think somewhere along the way I heard that their goal would be to 1 time a year visit. But the visit and O&M stays with the life of the system, and you have your local Board of Health department monitoring it, as well as the county monitoring them. County has a data a spreadsheet of all different treatment technologies and all the different systems throughout the Cape Cod region, and they monitor, make sure each property has a valid contract, that they have a valid operator listed. So there's really a lot of checks and balances, which is newer than when the technology first started being introduced.
So it's really out of the hands of the property owner then, as far as ensuring that the system is working properly?
Well, it's not completely out of the hands of the of the owner. You know, we as operators, I will tell you a story. We may have a client that doesn't believe in the technology, thinks it's a waste of time or whatever it might be. And we had an owner that would shut off his system the day after we left to do our O&M, and we swore he turned it on right before we got there. And how we found that out was that how we determined it, he wasn't hitting anywhere near his numbers. He was showing no treatment. So in that case, the Board of Health sent eventually it's set up that the Board of Health would send the homeowner or the property owner a notice that, you know, your treatment system's not working correctly. What are you going to do about it? And usually ties the operator into it. So that there is a regulatory compliance component that the local boards of health as well as the county do administer. But you could always have a situation like that the owner is just difficult to deal with, and it really is just, you know, it's the lack of knowledge of people that do that, because the reason you have the technology is that you needed the technology to either meet your nitrogen requirements or provide mitigation. So you in the long run, it's just cheaper just to keep it on, and that's what we try to educate our clients on.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. No, that was helpful. It was educational too. I wasn't aware that they had that sort of an oversight process in place, which does help mitigate these things. So, all right. Good. That's the only question I had. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ernie. So I guess I'll just add a couple comments. I mean, I've heard really everything before in the previous hearing as well. I thought Jim had some very good comments on concerns with wetlands impacts and the status of what we have for vernal pools. And I think Amy's analysis was excellent. So very challenging project, very challenging property. I think the inability to mitigate is very concerning here. It's somewhat of a catch-22, but there will be impacts. You know, there will be impacts to resource areas and other interests that should be mitigated, and really it's a lot that doesn't lend itself to mitigation. So I guess I'll put it back to you, Mr. O'Reilly, to see what you want to do moving from here. I think we would like more information on the status of vernal pools. It sounds like Amy would like to look into some of the issues, property issues as well at Town Hall. So what would you like to do moving forward?
I'm not a fortune teller, but I can read tea leaves. So I'm going to ask for continuance. And I've taken Kobe's notes, and I think with regards to vernal pool, I'm going to recommend that that would not be someone in my office that would dictate that. I'm probably going to ask for a consultant to come in and address the vernal pool issue, and we would talk about the habitat impacts or lack, if there are or are not impacts. Yes, so I guess we'd like a continuance. At this point in time, I'd like it for 2 weeks. No, you're not taking 2 weeks, it's a month. That agenda
I really prefer not to take 2 weeks based on the load we just got in. Up to the commission, ultimately.
I'll leave it to the commission. I know there's a sale involved, but there are some issues here that are going to take some time to look at, and I don't want to dismiss them by trying to rush it through. So if you've got a heavy night on the 3rd, I'll defer to how the chair wants to proceed. If you'd like us to go a month, I'd agree to that. If you want to fit us in 2 weeks, I'd agree to that as well.
Yeah, I've seen the list, or at least heard the list for the next meeting. I think it's really just too much. And we recently went past 11 o'clock on a hearing, and it was tough. So I'd like to go a month out if that's okay.
yeah, I don't want to talk about this job after you've handled 10 tough filings. So no, I think we'll go with the month continuance. I don't know what that date is. If you could let me know.
March
And,
17th.
17th. Oh boy, only day of obligation.
We can't pick them, it just lands on that date. Not like we can have fun on that date anyways.
I'll need to be wearing our green that day, I guess. But yes, I'll like a continuance to the 17th.
Okay. All right, then. Any comments from members of the audience? All right, then. I'll move that we continue the hearing for 0 Old Campground Road, map 30, parcels C6, C7, C8, and C9 until March 17th, 2021.
I'll second.
Seconded by Carolyn. All those in favor say aye, starting with Mark.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
Myself, Brad Chase, aye. The motion carries 6-0. All right, thank you for your time, and we'll see you a month from now.
Thank you.
Okay, next, I'm going to announce a notice of intent for 0 Snow Inn Road, map 15, parcel N8-B-0-R, proposal for a pier ramp, float, and dredging. The applicant has requested a continuance until March 3rd, 2021. And Amy, I think we're holding the space for the 3rd.
Yeah, I can't remember if we had already continued this one or not, but this date, I don't remember. So I would, this is one we counted on being on March 3rd before the onslaught that we. So I would keep it the 3rd.
Okay. Yeah, hearing you use the word onslaught is a little ominous, so we'll all have to be ready for that one. Well, then I move that we continue that hearing until March 3rd, 2021. To have a second, please.
Second.
Seconded by John. All those in favor say aye, starting with Mark.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Owen. Carolyn.
Oh, I didn't understand who you're calling. Aye.
And Ernie.
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. The motion carries 6-0. So that concludes our notice of intent. And then we've got some order of conditions. The first is 31 Shore Road, map 2, parcel B1-7, installation of fiber roll, sand, and plantings. Anything special about this one, Amy, to discuss?
No, we were just waiting for a revised plan that showed that there's going to be only 2 high for the fiber rolls. You're only going to see 1. The other one's going to be buried, and they're going to be 2 wide deep. So 2 on the bottom, then 1 on top of that. Planted. And if you have any questions on the draft orders, let me know. Or comments, rather.
All right. I would say, folks, if you have any comments, go ahead and speak up.
I'm all set.
Ernie, did you have any comments?
No, I don't. They look fine to me.
Okay. Well, then I would say if somebody wants to make a motion, we can move forward on this.
I'll move we approve the order of conditions for 31 Shore Road.
Second.
All right. Seconded by John. So we'll go through a roll call. All those in favor say aye, starting with Mark.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn,
Aye.
Ernie,
Aye.
and myself, Brad Chase, aye. The motion carries 6-0. All right, next, we have an order of condition for 18 Captain Todd Way, map 103, parcel W1-21. It's for a seasonal dock in Long Pond. And I think, Amy, this one's fairly straightforward.
Yep.
Okay. I would say if anyone has any comments, please go ahead and speak up. Carolyn?
In number 7, under the special conditions, it says no styrofoam or any other biodegradable material. Should that just be degradable? I understand the definition of biodegradable has changed over the years, but I think of it now as a biodegradable material that will be not so bad for the environment.
Oh, you're correct. I'll just change it to be degradable. I think that's clearer.
Degradable. Thank you.
Any further comments on this one? We're seeing none. If somebody would like to make a motion, please.
I'll move. Go ahead.
Approve the order. Move we approve the order conditions for 18 Captain Todd Way for the seasonal dock.
I'll second.
Can I have a second? All right, seconded by John. All those in favor say aye by roll call, starting with Mark.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. Motion carries 6-0. And we have a third order of condition for the Witchmere Beach Club, 23 Snow Inn Road, map 8, parcel 2, various site modifications. Any issues here we should consider, Amy?
No, this was my fault. It should have gone on the last meeting agenda because we approved it a month ago. And I got confused because they've had so many changes that for some reason I had it in my mind it was a change in plan and we didn't need to do an amended order. So that's not the case. And drafted it. The biggest thing here was we didn't want the number of privet on the new for the new project to be greater than what was out there or what was approved previously. So I added that language, I believe.
All right, thanks, Amy. If anyone has any comments, please go ahead and speak up. All right, hearing none, if somebody would like to make a motion.
Move we approve the order of conditions for the Witchmere Beach Club for the site modifications.
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Mark. All those in favor say aye through roll call, starting with Mark.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Abstain.
Okay. Ernie.
Aye.
Myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries 5-0 with 1 abstention. And we'll move on to extension permits. We have Windermere Beach Trust, 0 Hiawatha Road, I guess, map 6, parcel T1 on Beach Nourishment. Amy, if you want to remind us about this one.
Sure, I will. And I don't know if caller 6 is somebody from there, but feel free and hit *6 to unmute yourself if you're on a phone. Briefly, this stretch of beach extends from Hiawatha Road to the west to Eastern Ave in the east. They would like to continue to be able to purchase dredge sand from the town and put it on this stretch of beach above mean high water. No nourishment would go on any dune vegetation or below mean high water They've been compliant. The sand is compatible because it's clean, and it's from the entrance channels of our harbors. It's not from any basins. And those sediments have to be checked anyways when we do dredge them. So the sand, let's see. So their permit is still active because of the Extension Act and also because of the extension given to permits during the COVID emergency. So as we recently found out, our town-wide nourishment permit does not cover private beaches, just town ones. So right at the right time, they are asking for their extension. There's no plovers in this area. There's quite honestly very little beach left in most areas. So I would recommend approval. This does protect, adding some sand here does provide a little protection to the banking there. Anyway, I would recommend an extension for 3 years for Windermere Beach Trust. And again, I don't know if there's anybody on here for that, but feel free and speak up.
All right, thanks, Amy. Let's see if there's any comments from the commissioners on this. I'll start with Mark. Any comments on the extension permit?
I have no comments.
All right, Stan,
No comment.
John,
No comment.
Carolyn,
No comment.
Ernie?
No comment.
Okay. All right, any comments from members of the audience? *6 is the way to activate your phone. Okay, well, seeing none, then I'm going to move that we approve the extension permit for Zero Hiawatha, map 6, parcel T2 on beach nourishment. Do I have a second, please?
I did.
All right,
second.
All right, seconded by Stan. All those in favor say aye by roll call, starting with Mark.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries 6-0. And moving on, we have an extension permit request for 9 Herring Run Road, map 36, parcel L11 for renovations, addition, and a septic system. And I think we do have a representative here tonight. Do you want to describe your project briefly? Activate your line with *6.
Louisa Beaupre appears to be on a computer, and I'll send her an unmute request. I don't know if she has a microphone on her computer. I'm more than happy to speak to it, and if they can join, all the better.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Amy.
Sure. So this project was approved in 2018. Oh, Louisa is on.
I am. Hi.
Hi. Louisa, do you want me to just introduce it real quick and then you want to make comments, or would you like to speak to it directly?
Sure. Yeah, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Sure. So this project was approved in April 2018. The project was to convert a garage into a 2-bedroom dwelling and add an addition onto that. In addition to that, they wanted to install a septic, add a deck, and add a pervious driveway, and remove and replace retaining walls. This is pretty much close up to the street on Herring Run Road. For point of reference, this is between where Great Western is and the bike trail along the narrow section of river, kind of in the northern section of the Herring River. Again, south of Great Western, north of the bike trail, just north of the Bell's Neck. The project, so the work is almost entirely outside the 100-foot buffer to the top of the bank, but is within the 100 to 200-foot riverfront area. Project has not started. Louisa, you can correct me, but you had mentioned to Nikki that Your brother-in-law is a contractor and has been extremely busy. He hopes to start the work in fall of 2021. I did put the special conditions of that permit in the Dropbox for the commissioners. I don't see any need to deviate from the approved conditions other than to add the no fertilizer, no chemical condition for the property. And I would love to hear from you, but basically I would recommend a one-time 3-year extension.
Okay, yeah, and I just spoke to my brother-in-law this weekend. He doesn't think he's gonna try to start it in the fall, just get it closed up, put the windows in and do that sort of thing, but then he's probably not going to be able to finish it for a couple of years just because of how building has just kind of gone crazy, and he's booked up right now. But he is going to start it in the fall to get it buttoned up and put the windows in, get it enclosed.
All right. Let's see if there's any comments from members of the commission, starting with Mark.
Once the structure is weather tight and the outside of the building is secured, if you're able to get the septic work done, I would think that you could stay in compliance pretty easily.
We did the septic already. Stevie Nickerson did it. He had got a permit for that, so the septic is in.
Okay.
The power has been brought to the building and the water as well from the street.
Then essentially for your cleanup work, your big work is all done. The rest of it's just cleanup, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Stan.
I have no comment at this point.
Okay, John.
So is there no change to the footprint on this building? You're doing
There
work on
was
the
a small addition added on, a small addition proposed. So it's the conversion of a garage to a dwelling with a small addition to it.
Yeah, the small addition will just be the bathroom and laundry room.
Is that shown on the plan?
It is.
I see, but that's outside the 100.
Outside the 100, but within the 200 to the river.
All right, okay. All right, I have no further comments.
All right, thanks, John. Carolyn.
My only question is the ratio of shrubs to trees removed. Did we set that up that you could take down one tree and replace it with 2 shrubs?
I haven't removed any trees.
And do you plan to?
No, not unless I have permission. I mean, a couple fell down this winter in that last storm, but no, I don't plan to.
Okay. I think we talked about it as if it was necessary for safety or to do the work, that would be the ratio.
Okay, that ratio just holds the guideline for this one particular project, not a general rule we have.
Well, in general, when Nikki and I do administrative reviews, if somebody wants to take down a tree or two, and it's, just a tree or two and it's a safety hazard, we generally condition a 2 or 3 to 1 replacement with shrubs. That's more administrative. I think here it was just like, if you need to do this, please replant here.
Okay, thanks. That's my only question.
All right, thanks, Ernie.
Yeah, the only comment I have, I noticed there's item 12 talks about a dock on the property, and Ms. Beaupre, just so you know, there is going to be some discussion about a moratorium on docks on the Herring River, but I believe this. Well, what I was going to say was that this is outside of the area that we're proposing the moratorium on. So you'd still need a permit to replace it, but if you hear this discussion about Heron River and docks and that sort of thing, you're probably not subject to the moratorium that we're proposing.
Yeah, and I don't think I will be replacing the dock because it's just a overgrown area down there now. There's no, I have no need for a dock.
Okay, all right.
It was
thanks.
really just planks. It was a very loose definition of a dock.
Exactly, yes,
Very overgrown, yeah.
yes.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you. If someone would like to make a motion now for the extension permit request?
I would move to extend the permit for a period of 3 years.
All right, could I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, Stan seconded it. So all those in favor by roll call say aye, starting with Mark.
Aye.
Stan,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Carolyn,
Aye.
Ernie.
Yeah, I'm in favor of it. One comment though, there is, and Amy, in your comments, you mentioned the no chemical applications on the lot. And just make sure that our approval includes that condition.
Mhm.
And so I vote aye with that amendment.
All right, thanks, Ernie. And myself, Brad Chase, aye. So the motion carries 6-0. Thank you for your time and for waiting all this time tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, Amy, what do you want to take on next? Do you want to discuss the bylaws?
Nikki did add, we're getting behind on not necessarily typing up the minutes, but we're just so busy right now. So I'd love to try to knock off the sets of minutes. If you want to, they just got added. So if you want to take a minute, you hear somebody in the background here?
Do you need to take a break?
Somebody needs to go to the bathroom, I believe, and it's not me, it's the dog.
That's okay. Let's take a two-minute recess and we'll read the minutes. And we'll start with October 7th and
He's amazing.
November 4th.
He goes at the same time every night.
Oh, I will tell, if she doesn't eat at 6 o'clock at night, if I don't get up at a certain time in the morning, I hear about it, so. I believe it's 9 o'clock already.
Time flies when you're having fun.
That's right.
Better than 11:20, right?
It
We're
flies
not done yet.
regardless.
Yeah, the last two were pretty tough.
Yeah. After we do the minutes, I would love to spend some time on the regs because, as Larry said, we don't know when that meeting is going to be with them, and I just wouldn't want to go into an article discussion, a bylaw article discussion with them without the regs being ready to go to back them up. Not to approve them, like not to make them active right now because that's the cart before the horse, but just to have everything lined up. Since we have a little bit more time tonight.
Yep, I agree. Any comments in the minutes for October 7th?
What do you mean a little bit more time from 11:30?
Yes. Let's not go that late tonight with the, I don't think we need to, but let's not. All right, minutes.
I'm all set with the minutes.
Yeah, I've gone through them. They look fine to me too.
Caroline, you must have something.
No, I don't.
No kidding. Wow. Okay. Well, they're clean then. I have no comments on either date. Dan, I think you're good. Mark looks like good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, but I'll go ahead and move that we approve. There's something there. Oh, sorry. I'll go ahead and move that we approve the minutes for both October 7th, 2020 and November 4th, 2020.
I'll second it.
All right, seconded by Stan. All those in favor say aye by roll call, starting with Mark.
Aye.
Dan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye. Aye.
Myself, Brad Chase, aye. Motion carries 6-0. So I'm not having any feedback on my phone now. Is it better? Yeah, I'm just using a different phone from what I've used before, and so it's a little bit a different setup. So
How many phones do you have, Brad?
well, that was a landline prior, and this is my smartphone. And the landline just seemed to work really cleanly. And the smartphone, I think I need to speak up a little bit louder, and I've got to work the buttons. So yeah, I'll figure it out one of these days. All right. So, Amy, I think if you can run us through where you'd like some comments tonight. I know the in lieu fee structure is one thing we should discuss, but why don't you run us through what you think you need from us tonight?
Yeah. So the first thing I did was to take for what you voted on for the water dependent structures bylaw changes and put them and made the respective changes to our regs. That being said, I have not proofed that yet, but I think I got pretty much everything there, and I will do that. Then the other substantive changes, of course, are the mirror, the bylaw change, suggested change from 3,000 to 1,000 square feet for wetland size. So that was an easy, quick change. Again, just want to be consistent. Give me 2 seconds. Her Majesty would like to come in the house right now. Okay, and the rest I will run through. Let's see. There was no change to 1.01, the purpose. No change to 1.02, jurisdiction. 1.1 or 1.03, again, the regulatory change, square footage, 3,000 to 1 if that passes at a meeting. Also included the phrase landward limit of vernal pool habitat, just to make sure that was clear. Section 2, departure from state regulations. A, preamble stayed the same. B, wetlands, resource, and bordering requirements, again, changed 3,000 to 1. Item C, wetland replication, stayed the same. Any questions so far? Doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, Amy, one question for you under 1.04, section 4, subparagraph 6.
I think we got there yet.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Wait a minute. 1.04?
Yeah. Am I looking? I'm probably looking at. I don't know.
What's the section you're looking at?
Mitigation
title?
constraints sites.
Not there yet.
Not there.
Oh,
We'll get there.
okay.
1.041 preamble is the next change. And the second paragraph starts with, to that end, these regulations, among other things, specifically require the maintenance of a 50-foot no disturb zone and a 60-foot no new building or addition zone landward from the protected resource. In light of discussions that we've had last meeting and this meeting about, when I read no new building or structure or addition, when I'm thinking of building, I don't think of a shed necessarily as a building. So I consider it a structure. But, you know, we had discussion tonight about the shed at a property, and some of the commissioners said, well, it's a new building in the 60 foot. So I think we should maybe use a different word for building. Like, what do you, let me back up. I think the purpose of the 60 is to, so that people can have egress around the around their home without impinging on the 0 to 50. And if you can walk around a shed, in my mind, and still be out of the 50, that might be okay.
Well, I think, excuse me, Amy, I think you already used the word structure. To me is what I think of. We don't want any structure in there. I mean, we talked about a little bit about this last meeting. We were kind of like looking at patios and stuff as being okay, but I guess then somebody could say that's a structure too. I don't know.
And in the past, we have considered that a structure, or like a fence. We've considered a fence a structure. We've considered a patio a structure, a deck a structure. So I guess maybe we need to determine the difference between building and structure. And what I did, I took the language in this reg is the language that you approved, I believe, in the bylaw. Let me check that.
What if we change to dwelling? And
no.
It could be a commercial building or something, though.
But our intent for the 50 to 60 is to allow free access in that space so that they don't go into the 50. So can we say something like structure that doesn't impede open access, or something along those lines to that, within that buffer zone, within the 50 to 60?
Yeah, I could add a sentence after, you know, the 60-foot no new building or addition zone landward of the edge of the resource area or protected resource. I could say something like, any structure in the 50 to 60 foot buffer shall not impede access around the building or structure so as to encroach on the 50-foot no disturb zone. Something like that?
Yeah, that's getting close to where I think we need to go.
I do agree it needs a little more description. Hang on here.
Amy, I think you have that language in the bylaw.
I thought I took it directly from the bylaw. Hang on, let me go back to that.
I thought we had some describing language that would say what the purpose and how we were trying to minimize, pushing activity into the 50, interrupting wildlife use of that border.
Maybe I have it
No, one
farther
of the-
down in the regs. Hold on.
Would it be worth consideration to remove 60 foot and emphasize the 10-foot zone beyond the 50-foot zone?
If we have 60 in the bylaw, then I think we have to have the language for 60 in here. So let me pull that up.
While you're looking at it, I'll just describe my thoughts on the shed. And I think in many cases, the shed could be acceptable. But in some cases, say you have a patio that pushes to the 55, and then you've got undisturbed 50. And if you put a shed there, then all of a sudden people are going around that into the 50. So I think that we don't want to limit our interpretation. But a lot of times I probably wouldn't have a problem with a shed.
Yeah, I agree with that. In this particular instance, without going back to the case, I would.
I'm trying to read further. There is some more wording. Excuse me. There is some more wording further down, and I'm just trying to read it all. It's just before the number 3, the new no disturb zone. You've got some language in here about the 50. When siting a new building or an addition within the 50 to 100, structure, building or addition shall be set back at least 60 feet from the resource area to allow passage between the building and the 50-foot buffer.
Yep, I do. Sorry. I thought.
You're looking at the bylaw revision, Stan?
No, I'm looking down below on page 4, I guess.
All right, because in the bylaws you have that, Amy. You says within the 50 to 60-foot buffer area, no new structure is permitted that would impede access so as to cause intrusion into the 50-foot no disturb zone. That's kind of what we're trying to say, right?
Yeah,
well, I'm saying it says further down, Ernie. It says any structure would be at least 60 feet out so as to prevent.
It's like I said, on page 4, top half of the page, underneath my blue line that says repetitive. It's the next little sentence all by itself there. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. So hopefully that works.
So with that in mind, that would say nothing should be built in there. Like in the case of the shed, this would indicate that could impede passage within that 10-foot area.
That's up to you to decide, right? And it would be case by case basis, essentially. If it impeded access or not.
Right, if you had lots of room, in the 50 to 100 above the shed, and then you put a shed and you had 5 or 6 feet, and it was altered in the 50 anyways, then you might accept that shed there.
Right. Right.
Otherwise, if you put structure, you could exclude everything, but I don't know if that's our intent. I guess it's how people feel about having building or addition versus having structure.
We have building and addition in the bylaw, so We're not going back to
Okay.
change that.
All right.
That would be a hearing. That was not advertised. This is just discussion in which we can do this, but I didn't advertise this is a hearing tonight.
The one outcome that could be different, you're going to see a lot of folks say, okay, we're going to put a patio there. And, but we can still ask for a vegetative buffer strip. It's still there.
You still have to mitigate.
Yeah, you still have to mitigate.
Okay. I guess I read that line and forgot that farther on it explained it more.
And then right below that, we talk about a vegetative buffer strip in red, that whole paragraph.
Right.
All right, so we have some tools here.
Well,
So I
Brad, are
think
you saying it leaves us a little bit of flexibility the way we're leaving it right now?
It does, but I also think, we want this to be the same as our bylaw, and so we kind of voted on this language already.
Right.
For me, I always just saying structure, but we've already voted on building or addition for the bylaw, and we have some flexibility to interpret what that addition would be, as well as putting in a vegetative buffer strip if we wanted to.
Right.
So I think that our intention is to prevent this passageway to, bleed into the 0 to 50, and I think we've got some ability to deal with that here.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So Amy, you're suggesting keep it the way it is with that sentence right there, clarifying the intention.
Yes, I just cross-checked it with the bylaw, and that's the same language.
Okay.
Farther down. Okay. So if there's no more on that, we'll skip down to number 2, buffer zone. I highlighted stuff in blue. I couldn't remember where we left this. So essentially, when we approve a limit of work, unless they're specifically called out to be saved, technically, if there's any trees within that limit of work, they're fair game for removal. And again, unless they're specifically called out to be saved, which isn't very often. And some commissions do cap the amount of canopy trees that can be removed within jurisdiction. Our regs, we do talk about removal of trees for a view and only allow 5 to 10% removal. Again, that's specific to creating a view and wouldn't include necessarily trees that would be removed to site a new home. And just curious if you want to add anything in there or keep your regulations as they are and don't add anything about percentage of canopy trees to be removed.
Amy, what's your ballpark for what's going to be removed at, 18 Captain Todd Way there? That's a recent reference we could think about. It's kind of hard for me to grab what 25%, is that typical? Is that a lot? That one's got a lot of trees coming.
Yeah, that one is a lot. I mean, it's not necessarily a reason to deny if you can't meet that, but it just raises some flags that, hey, there's a lot of disturbance happening here. And that lot's huge, so the 25%, they probably meet it. With I don't have a guess with how many trees that would be.
Yeah.
For Captain Todd, I thought you meant for old campground. Sorry, with the driveway. Captain Todd, again, I still don't have a great idea.
Yeah. I feel like it's a little arbitrary for me to come up with a number right now. I know what you're trying to do, and I think that's a good idea. I just don't know what that number should be.
Yeah, and I don't think this is one we don't need to decide on tonight. There's no connection between this regulation and something necessarily in the bylaw. This is, and I don't think there needs to be something in the bylaw to this. This is a regulation. This is, you know, a standard we hope can be met, but you know, not everything needs to have that connection. So, I mean, I can, or actually, if I can put something on you folks, because time is going to be limited. If you could look at other towns and their regulations, I know Brewster, I believe, has a canopy tree percentage regulation. But if people could, if wouldn't mind looking at a couple other towns and seeing what they have for something like this, that would be really helpful.
Amy, I kind of like the language you got now because it doesn't bind us to any sort of percentage, and it gives us discretion to approve what we think is reasonable.
Okay. I think it's just sometimes one of the things I know I lose sight on is, you know, we're talking about siding a building, but sometimes we lose sight of, well, some other things like how many trees are really coming down here in order to do something. And yeah, I'm not saying they can't be, but it kind of triggers you to really think about that as well.
Yeah, but put it in perspective though, if you got 40 trees on a lot, you're going to take down 25% of them versus only 10 trees on a lot, you're taking down 25% of them. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
So I'd rather not even put a number on it, just leave it to your discretion.
I would agree with Skip simply because of the fact, depending on the size of the tree and the variety of the tree, it's going to impact the type of canopy. A great big red oak is going to take up a lot more space than a pine overhead. I mean, I think the variation really needs to be judged on a case-by-case basis for everybody's.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just someplace in our regs where I've seen it in other people's, the only one that comes to mind right now is Brewster, but I know I've seen it other places. And I was curious if we should.
So Amy, when you introduced this item a minute ago, you talked about having a performance standard. It sounded like you were talking about it in the limit of work, within the limit of work. And when I read the language you had written there, I was thinking you were talking about a percentage in the whole jurisdictional area, which is a very different thing generally. And so I agree with the comments about not putting any percentage in the jurisdictional area. And I don't see how you can put a number like 25% within the limit of work. That wouldn't make a lot of sense to me at all. So
No, you couldn't do that. I think what other towns, why they put this on jurisdictional area on a lot is you have somebody come forward with a project. A project may be small, and it may be one or a couple trees come down. And a couple years down the road, they want to do something else and a couple more. So it's more of that cumulative impact, and why, again, we don't have to decide tonight. We can keep it as it is if you want. I believe that's what other towns or commissions were getting at when they created kind of this threshold for canopy removal, is just, it's that gradual remove a couple here, here, and here, and before long, the site's completely different. But
so where is there language on view shed pruning? So don't we have language elsewhere on view shed pruning? And isn't that really the issue here? People wanting to prune for view, and that's
it's partially it. It's partially people clearing way too much for large yard areas. Let me look at our tree standards. I know it's on our administrative review. I thought it was in here too, farther down. Pruning, cutting, and clearing of trees and other vegetation. That's page 6 and 7. I'm just reading. It does say, all tree cutting and pruning shall be closely regulated and restricted. Property line to property line vista pruning and clear cutting are prohibited, as is the topping of trees. The opening of specific windows of view is a preferred approach. The commission may require that thinning or pruning may be done first. So I'm fine if you want to leave it like that. Not put in anything else.
I would prefer to leave it as
I'm
is.
fine as well, but if somebody wanted to do that homework, if they had a strong interest, that's something someone could look into. Sometimes it's helpful just to see what other towns are doing.
I think that's where it came from.
Amy, the only place where I see a percentage is under E, where you talk about removal of up to 5% of existing trees on the lot greater than or equal to 4 inches. And then, or 10% of existing trees less than or equal to less than 4 inches within a 3-year period. So that's the only thing I see anything specific in this.
I think the other reason I wanted to look at this again was we haven't changed that in forever. And I was like, should we make any changes to that? So E, but yeah, that's for cutting for the purpose of a view.
Right.
Right. Okay. I think our view regulations are fine. I was just curious if we wanted to do anything else, because people don't always cut trees or prune because of a view. And we can treat them on a case-by-case basis. That's fine with me.
Oh, I also see where you came up with the 90% tonight.
Yes.
Just to add one more point, there's a lot of cases where the pruning and the thinning of the canopy is going to be beneficial and take away a lot of storm damage also. So that needs
Of course. And typically we do all that administratively, or if it's storm damage, I don't even make them do any type of administrative permit. They just get an email from me saying that they can take care of it. I would agree. Pruning actually can be very beneficial. So. Well, it sounds like we're going to take that language out, which is fine. Remove any language that I had proposed farther up on page 3, which happy to take out. Sounds like you all want to keep it as it is, and that's good with me. All right. It's gone. Not on your copy. For some reason, I can't edit in Dropbox tonight, so I'm editing on my computer, or my document here. Okay, so going back, now we're at the top of page 4. I struck a sentence out because it's repetitive. And then again, in the next line, it's the same language that's proposed to be in the bylaw. And then talk about what a vegetated buffer strip is, or what the purpose really is. I don't think that's very new. Any questions on the red vegetated buffer strip paragraph there? Or comments?
Looks good.
Okay. Let's see, we'll go farther down. Well, the next section before we get to that, above no disturb zone, that, no turf or sod is permitted within the wetland resource 100-foot buffer zone, etc. But the exception would be a native sod. I don't suggest changing that in any way, but in light of some of our current discussions, anybody want to change our language about sod or turf? We say native sod may be permitted. So I think that covers us. Okay. Try to breeze through things here.
I'd just like to make a comment, Amy. I looked at a little bit of that stuff that Lindsay sent.
Yeah.
And when you talk to him next, could you ask him whether he is aware of any studies that address nutrient loading in lawns on Cape Cod?
Oh, right. Because all those studies were off Cape.
Right.
Yep. Sure.
And I sent you that note too, Amy. My question on that was similar to John's. And also, because of our sandy soil, aren't we concerned about infiltration as not just runoff? The infiltration takes years to get to the stream that would be measurable.
Yeah, well, it depends on the nutrient. Phosphorus takes a long time. Nitrogen moves much faster. But we do have sandy soils, which don't take, things seep in very quickly. But yes, I'll ask him.
Yeah. I read all those abstracts and I wasn't quite sure it applied to us.
I was just asked to share it with you because I think he'll be wanting future conversation, to be on a discussion at a future meeting about a few things, this being one of them. I told him not anytime soon, or not in the next month or so. But
another consideration on that topic would be the penetration rate in various types of soil and depending on the grain. So that would be a big impact as well.
Absolutely. Okay. The next change is, there's a lot on page 5. Let me check the bylaw. I think we say, oh, actually, no, we wouldn't, in the bylaw, we didn't specify ratios. Work in the wetland itself, if we ever were to allow it, would require a 4-to-1 mitigation ratio. These are all things we've been applying. 3-to-1 in the 0 to 50, 2-to-1 in the 50 to 100. I believe you voted on this already. I still have it in red. Work in land subject to coastal storm flowage, 1-to-1 mitigation, or some towns don't require mitigation for floodplain. I think 1-to-1 is reasonable. It's still a resource area. We're hopefully getting performance standards from the state at some point on this to help us.
I personally don't think anything beyond 1-to-1 is necessary in that case.
I would agree. I don't think beyond 1-to-1 is needed. Everybody else okay with 1-to-1 in the floodplain? Looks like I'm seeing some nods. Okay. So then following that, conservation approved offsite mitigation payment of in lieu fees to improve other specific wetland resource areas in town as described below. Then we jump to mitigation constrained sites. I'm not going to read it all, so whatever you want to talk about.
I like what you have written specifically about in lieu fees and how they work. I think $3.50 a square foot is a reasonable number, but you also leave it out there anyway by saying, or in accordance with the current Conservation Commission fee schedule. So that sets a baseline that can be modified at any time, it seems to me. So I think that's a reasonable way to go. Otherwise, we could get really hung up trying to figure that one out right now.
Where do
The
we
only
come up
problem
with
the only problem I have with that is we're referring to the fee schedule. So is there something in the fee schedule now?
No, we have a fee schedule for but we would have to add this, and I don't want to do that yet. That is something we can do if this gets approved.
Yeah.
But we would add it. So essentially, we would say, okay, this costs this much for a notice of intent, this much for an RDA. We would say, if you have to do in lieu fees, it's this much per square foot. I'm going to put Mark on the spot here for a second. Mark and I had a conversation. You said you took one of your jobs, not in Harwich, and because you thought the number might be a little off when you first looked at this, and you said you used this number for a job that you had, and you found it to be fairly close.
In this particular case, it was what I did was compare the square footage of the size compared to what my actual charges were to the customer project. And I was surprised to find out that figure of $3.50 a foot was pretty close. My particular job was a little bit more. There were some other factors. It was a really hard place to access, so that makes a difference. But overall, I was surprised to find that it was remarkably close. I thought it might be totally out of line, but it really isn't.
So can you be more specific about that? Close, like to your total billing? Like the total cost to your customer was something on the order of $3 or $4 a square foot?
No, actually, the particular job that I did, the square footage price came up to about $4.50. But like I said, there's other factors that are involved. It was a very difficult site to get to. But regardless, what I'm saying is if you took away the difficulty in access in that particular job, that figure would have been pretty close. So I think it's a realistic number for the sake of projection and trying to get some kind of value for some kind of worth to a dollar value.
Amy, are these being submitted to the selectmen too for their approval? Is that, I'm trying to remember.
So no, but I think we need to have the commission endorse these regs before we go to this. So we're going to the selectmen with a warrant article for the wetland bylaw change. In that bylaw, we mention in lieu fees. So in this document, they're going to say, well, what are these in lieu fees? What are they going to be? I don't think they would approve of something if it was an unknown value at the time of that meeting with them prior to town meeting. So they may or may not see them, or I would probably provide them to them because we try to answer all the questions ahead of time. I mean, it's not required.
Well, what I was getting at, because what I was getting at is somebody would say, well, where'd you come up with the 350?
Well,
Now, I can understand, you know, what Mark just said kind of supports that, but is somebody going to question that amount is what I'm going to say.
I think it's pretty
Again,
likely somebody will.
right. Yeah,
Isn't the town of Barnstable that use that figure too?
they do. And I can't remember, I know I asked, I don't remember if I got a response about why it was 350. I'll follow up.
It may be worth inquiring, but really what I'm saying is, you know, in my own experience, I thought it was a very high number, but in actuality, my experience tells me that it was not a ridiculous number. I thought it was pretty accurate.
No, I agree. I hear you, Mark. I'm just saying somebody's going to question, oh, well, why the 350?
Absolutely.
That's why originally in some of the earlier times, Amy, I mentioned I don't like putting in there. That goes back in my past career when I do procedures and everything. I tried avoiding specific numbers like that. But I'm not saying that that shouldn't be in this case. You know, I'm just saying that that's my background.
I think if
Because you referred to a table of where the fees would be placed, but I'm not saying they shouldn't be there. I'm just saying that that would be because of my history in my career. I wouldn't do that, but.
I guess I would argue for a set number so that it wouldn't ever appear that the Conservation Commission is asking more of one applicant versus another, and that there wouldn't be an appearance of bias. Keep in mind that just because somebody can't meet mitigation on the site, and just because they offer these in lieu fees doesn't necessarily their project on its own merits is approvable. So this is only really going to be
I
used
definitely
in-
agree it should be in the rate schedule. You know, I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I'm just saying as part of this document, in my way of doing it, I wouldn't include it because this is like a fixed document that's hard to change, in my opinion.
I mean,
Relatively.
it's only changed, it can be changed during a public meeting, not necessarily a public hearing. So I don't think it's that hard. I think it's that hard to change.
Again, I'm just saying my own personal preference. I'm not saying we
I
shouldn't do
understand.
it.
How do people feel about a range with qualifying language that says why there would be a range based on project size and resources impacted? I feel the 350.
I don't like that idea because every time we have to deal with this, we have a long and complicated conversation about how do we come up with a number. I like this number myself. I mean, I really like that Mark says it's in line with his experience, and it never seemed all that out of line to me. I pay people to do work on my property, and it's not cheap. And I don't know. I couldn't come up with a number out of thin air like 350, but I think it's a reasonable number, and I way prefer to have a single number in there. And if it turns out for whatever reason somebody makes a convincing argument that that number is wrong and there's another more compelling number we should use, we've got the flexibility to change it.
Yeah. I'd be happy to reach out to a couple other contractors too and ask that I know well and ask them, you know, I hate to ask them for favors, but in prep for this discussion, I want to ask them to do the same thing that Mark did and see if they get ballpark the same number.
Here's my concern with 50 is that it goes back about 10 years ago in Barnstable. So, you know, is it still a valid number? It's an old number. And then again, in all fairness to Mark and, you know, John, you're a statistician. You've got a sample size of 1 right now you're working on. So, I think we need, you know, more examples.
What about some of the jobs that that people have done under our mitigation? You know, can they give you some of the information from what the job costs?
Yeah, you can ask.
or the companies that do the work.
Yeah.
How are we going to solve the immediate requirement here, though? You've got a meeting coming up when? Maybe tomorrow, for all you know. And you have to have something hard to give them. You can't just say we're looking into it. I'll see if I can talk to some landscapers I deal with. We may need to take that on as some work that we need to do to refine that number, but we're not going to do that in the next week or two.
No, why don't, I mean, we can let them say whether or not they, can buy into that number or not. In the meantime, we can look. I think we need to at least have a starting point for discussion on that.
We'll bump it up to $4 or $5, given that it's an old number. Start there. $4, $5.
Okay, that's fine.
I can't tell you if 5 is too much. My guess is 350 is, a little on the shy side, given that it's an older number.
It depends on the particular job. There's a lot of variables, Brad. I mean, to have a number that's $455 a square foot is not unreasonable in a lot of cases, but in other cases, it's going to be way out of sight. And my problem with this whole thing is essentially give somebody the opportunity to buy their way into a piece of land that couldn't be otherwise utilized. There's a lot down on Bank Street that referenced earlier as a perfect example. Under the right circumstances, could this be utilized there? And the impact is obviously going to be much worse. So
I think
this whole thing is.
You couldn't use this to buy your way into a permit. If a project, hang on, Carolyn, I'm going to mute you. No, you're good. If a project doesn't stand on its own merits without this, essentially, like basically the only thing they're missing is they can't meet mitigation requirements, but it meets all the other standards of the act and the bylaw. It's not going to have an adverse impact to the wetland. Then this would come into play. For instance, the property I'm thinking of, we'd have an example might be a property on Shady Drive that we saw a little bit ago, where I don't see what they're going to do would necessarily have an impact, but it's hard to get an approval because they can't meet mitigation requirements on that lot. So say that lot on Bank Street, if that property, if whatever they're proposing there's not just going to be mitigation requirements that they can't meet, I feel, on that lot, personally. So you don't want to see us using this very often if we don't have to,
I guess that's my point. I mean, to me, this is going to be the least preferred option.
I think it gives people that option because right now our regulations state that you have to mitigate at a ratio of 3-to-1, 4-to-1, or 2-to-1. On these lots that have no ability to mitigate, we're in a situation where if we deny because they can't do mitigation and that's it, we open ourselves up to big problems. So this, in my mind, is kind of rare and unusual circumstances that we would use this.
Are we premature unless we've already delegated a site that would be acceptable to receive mitigation?
Well, I'm just thinking about this. This is the last choice. Your first choice is mitigation on site. Your second choice is off-site mitigation. Your last choice is if you can't find something off-site, then you can do in lieu fees. And that's what it's saying right in here. Because it says right in here, in lieu fees, in lieu of off-site mitigation.
Given the time constraints that Amy's got to get this thing wrapped up, And with Mark's experience and the fact that this 350 number is a number of years old, why don't we just set a number of $4? I think you can justify that, Amy, saying we've looked at other towns and the 350 is an older number. We've decided to go in with a $4 number to start, and we can adjust that going forward. But at least gives you something to work with.
I think that's fair.
I agree with that.
I like that.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, we can vote on the whole thing as a one when we're done. But any other in that section in 1.04, 4 and 5, which is mitigation constrained sites and request to pay in lieu fees. Is there any more comments?
I have one comment on number 5, where you highlight plantings. And I think that's okay, because I think most mitigation will be plantings, but I see the potential to have a much wider range of mitigation types. And so I guess if you could just, as you go, what's that? Above number 5, let's see, let me back up here. So number 4, mitigation constrained sites.
Yep.
And then go down to 3, let's see. Well, you've got an A and a B, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So under 5, you have when the required mitigation is provided off-site, mitigation plan. So you might read that to think it's just about plantings, and I think we all agree it's not.
I'll just say mitigation locations.
Yeah,
take planting out of there.
Yeah. I think that's fine. I'm kind of excited about having some out-of-the-box mitigations that might come up. Removal of, fill or, beach work. There's taking out a dam. There's just a number of things that could happen. And I just want to make sure we're not really focusing on just plantings.
Yeah, there's 3 places where planting is noted in that line. I'm just going to take that out. Word.
Okay.
And in number 6 in that section, Amy, you talk about the commission must find the proposed activities will not have an impact on the wetland resources. When I read that, I thought it should say would not have an adverse impact. Got to have a bowl of treats on your table next to your computer.
He gets enough. Let me go back to that, Ernie. Sorry, I was distracted.
I know you were.
Commission must find that the proposed activities will not have a negative impact.
Or
Adverse.
Adverse. Either one. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and this is a question. Number 6 also, affecting or effecting? I think it might be affecting.
No. What?
I think it's an E.
Okay, I'm not sure.
Affect versus effect. I have effect. Effecting.
I agree. Effect.
Okay, good enough.
I think it makes a difference if you grew up in Boston or Springfield.
Near Springfield.
But see, I'm New Jersey.
That's
yeah,
a whole
so you
different
have
thing.
to find a completely different word.
I agree with you, Carolyn. I thought it was affect.
I'm not too worried about that piece tonight, but if I get a free moment, I will look that up.
Just a question, going back to 4 and 5, where you were taking the words out of planting. I'm reading that different ways. No, but isn't that how you were coming up with the calculation? If you were looking at what you could have done on a property to calculate the square footage of mitigation needed?
Generally.
For the off-site mitigation?
Yes.
We're not saying that we're planning on planting off-site. We're just trying to calculation for the off-site, isn't it? I'm not sure. I'm reading it two different ways.
Two different things.
No, planting means you're planting, so that's I think what it says.
We talk
Where
about
you-
planting ahead, and I think number 5, by taking the mention out of planting, leaves you open to something other than planting for off-site mitigation.
I'm just
Yeah.
trying to go back to where we do the
Yeah.
calculation of what the mitigation would be then.
I feel like off-site mitigation is slightly different than in lieu fee. Because off-site mitigation doesn't necessarily, again, mean planting.
Okay. Gotcha, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You straighten
Anything
me out.
else? No. Well, 10 o'clock at night, I'm surprised. I'm a morning person. I do my best work, not now. So, anything else on those big sections there? We're almost done.
No, that's you, Jamie. Thanks a lot. That's really, I think, great progress to have this approved.
Yeah, this is real. I mean, that's the big piece that I want us to have at least a solid, reg on prepped for that meeting. The rest is really just either, I think the rest is pretty easy. Item G on page 8 above lawns. Just changed the language. Didn't really change it much other than, includes organic fertilizers, native plantings, 90% survival rate over 2 years. I don't think we have much on that. And then 1.06 lawns. No new turf lawns will be permitted within commission jurisdiction. I did add the applicant may be allowed to plant a native grass seed mix to create a lawn area, provided I should need to take it out, provided all other regulations are met.
Amy, didn't we approve Snow Inn Road or Bayview putting in sod?
We did, but that was expressly allowed for that project. We can ask for a variance from any of our regulations, and we do say above that native or what could be approved. I can say can add a sentence in there that where am I getting feedback from? I can add a sentence saying unless, it's a native sod lawn expressly approved by the Conservation Commission, but I think we say that above. Actually, we talked about no turf or sod unless it's native in a section above, so this may be just repetitious. I can just pull from that language. Yeah, so in section 2, I am getting feedback from somewhere, and Brad, I do think it's your tank now, but that's not a problem. I'm just wondering where it was coming from.
You think it's my phone?
No, you're okay.
Well, you know what?
I don't know. We have a section
what?
above. Sorry,
I was going to say, I put my charger on. That might have done it.
I don't know. We have a section above it, more at the beginning of the document, on page 4, just above bullet or item 3, no disturb zone. We have the whole paragraph about no new turf or sod lawns are prohibited in the wetland resource area 100-foot buffer zone. I can either remove the language from up there and put it down below under lawns, or I could put it in both places.
It might be best to consolidate it in one place.
I mean, I think it belongs in lawns.
I agree.
All right. So what about the part about irrigation? No, irrigation doesn't necessarily need to be lawn. So irrigation, where it talks about that in that item on page 3, I think we can leave that for now. I'm going to cut out first 2 sentences and move them down below. Okay, that works. You'll see these anyways. I'll re-upload them tomorrow or so, and you'll see them, but I moved that. Going further down, I struck out a bullet because mow lawn to a height of 2.5 inches to promote deeper. I mean, that's nice, but is it really that relevant? I don't know of anybody who looks at that or abides by it. I just thought it was irrelevant.
Hard to enforce.
Not measuring your lawn.
I personally don't think that's a relevant item to put in it.
Figured since we're cleaning these up, we might as well look at that stuff. All right, I will take that out. And all right, so now I'm on the next page under 2, where A, B, and C have minor edits. I think A and B, this is under standards designed to minimize erosion in the buffer. That's the big bold bullet. Item C, what did we say about mulch? No?
I don't like it myself, certainly not in the 0 to 50. And I think it's over applied in the 50 to 100. So I think you call out. What's that?
Because why?
Oh, because it takes up natural plantings that have use. You know, I think the landscapers love it. You got to maintain it forever, and you got to keep working it and applying it. I've just seen just much overuse of mulching, in my opinion, and taking up native plantings. I mean, what value does mulching have if you have large areas of, grass or shrubs replaced by mulch?
Right. The only thing mulch does is hold moisture a little bit better for your plants.
Does it prevent runoff? Does it prevent runoff?
Not better than ground covers.
No, but before the ground
Oh, yeah. My recommendation is is nothing in the 0 to 50 and a one-time light application in the 50 to 100, again, to help with runoff until other things can establish. We're talking like an inch thick of mulch, not much in the 50 to 100. Maybe a little bit more. But, you know, a one-time application in the 50 to 100, if they ask for it, not if they don't ask for it. Again, to help until other things establish. The problem there gets to be, well, one time they just get used to having it and they do it again and they forget about this condition that they're not supposed to do it multiple times. They're only allowed to do it once. So Brad's right. Go ahead.
Many times it's beneficial around the new plantings, just to retain the moisture. You're already limiting the watering, so the moisture retention is crucial. And in many cases, if you've only got a real thin layer, say an inch, before you know it, it dries out and blows away. It disperses, and now you've lost the value of it. I mean, I can understand not replenishing, but as a revegetative effort, to me, it makes sense to try to do that in certain applications where it's going to be beneficial to the plants.
What about, you know, loose erosion matting, you know, jute matting instead of mulch? Help stabilize area until plantings. I think I'm a little more in favor of some of that.
Well, what if you have to remove it? What about the disruption? What's it do if it stays there and breaks down?
Well, if it's jute, you know, coir, coconut, I don't see any adverse impact. If it's a loose mesh, not a tight woven one.
Where's the impact to pine bark?
I think I'll let Brad answer because that was Brad's point, I think. I don't know where Brad went.
I mean, if it's a man-made mulch, which is basically ground up wood chip and dyed, that's a very commercial thing and certainly has no place for it. But a natural wood mulch, I mean, you have trees fall down and rot in place all the time, so it's the same thing.
No, it's very different,
I guess it's
Mark.
more manicured.
Yeah, what you're talking about is, you know, you've got some native plantings in the 50 to 100, and you're going to carve that up and put down an area of mulch. It's one thing to put mulch around fresh shrubs and put a little area around them, but what you're seeing is a pattern of people putting out large chunks of areas that are mulched, and that to me has no habitat value. So what I recommend, so we don't talk about it all night, is that we say no to the 0 to 50, and then you can come up with some language on limited applications in the 50 to 100.
Okay.
Just briefly, Brad, I wasn't suggesting using it as a substitute in the 0 to 50, only in the application of additional plantings for mitigation. That's all. I understand your point.
Yeah. If you put it around plants, I think it has some value, but I'm seeing it really over applied, in my opinion, in places in you know, big chunks that don't grow back, and so, you know, we should just keep an eye out for that and try to encourage native plantings.
Agreed.
Okay. Moving on, the next big changes are water dependent structures, which are just, I will recheck it, but they're just going to mirror what the water dependent structures bylaw changes you made were. I guess that goes into a little freshwater. We didn't do freshwater docks and piers. Do you want to change anything about our freshwater guess that's not going to be a bylaw change. What happened is the water dependent structures bylaw that we have for the town essentially reads like a set of regulations. It goes into the calculations, the square footages, the depths. That should have been much more basic, and what our regulations are for water dependent structures, fresh or salt, should have gone into that detail, if you will, because essentially we're just repeating what our bylaw says in our regs, but that's what we have to do. But I don't want to completely fix the water dependent structures bylaw to do that. So we don't have to do fresh water tonight, so we can put that off. I think the rest is pretty minor. We did say we're gonna have to come up with regulations for a shellfish survey, or not regulations, standards. I don't think we need to do that tonight.
When's the timing for that, Amy? Try to get it done before the town meeting or wait for the town meeting?
Let me switch over to the water dependent structures bylaw and see what's in there. Give me a second.
Yeah, there isn't much. I mean, we've discussed, survey methods, and I think we've got some things written down, so we're not that far away. We might want to allocate time
to it
before we forget. We've talked about it a lot. In 8 months from now, we're not going to really remember, or we'll be starting over again almost.
Oh, yeah. Well, it does say in the bylaw that the shellfish survey shall conform to the sampling methods set forth in the wetlands protection regulations. So we do need to do it before town meeting.
Okay.
I don't know if the selectmen are gonna ask for it at warrant article discussion, because that bylaw will be discussed at that meeting. But I'm not prepared to have that conversation tonight.
Yeah, I feel pretty good because it was one topic where we had some decent agreement with Hines.
Yeah.
On some items on what we wanted to see in survey improvements. So I think we're not far off.
Okay.
We just got to give it like an hour some meeting when we have the time.
All right. Well, that's about it for
Amy,
my comments. Go ahead.
Didn't Hines volunteer to come up with some standards for a shellfish survey?
Yes.
I think he did. I don't know if we,
We'll take them up on it.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, one of the bullets I put out had a list of things that should be in there, and Hines discussed that, and he was pretty agreeable. So I think we're very close.
All right, I think we are too. But those are the only changes I have. Does anybody have anything else for the regs?
No, I think you've done an amazing job, Amy, really. These are a lot of topics that have given us some heartburn for a while. So I think it's some real progress.
I'm trying. We're trying. Do you want? Yeah, vote on these changes pending town meeting approval of the bylaw.
Okay. All right, well, I'll move that we approve the changes reviewed tonight on the Town of Harwich Conservation Commission Wetlands Protection Regulations, pending approval of the bylaws, which correspond to the same language at the May town meeting.
Second.
All right, seconded by Stan. I'll ask if there's any discussion, make sure I got the motion right, and did that sound okay, Amy?
Yeah.
All right, then I'll ask for a vote by roll call, and starting, oh, we got one question from Mark. Yep.
Question. Going further down the line. Under procedures, it says 200 feet riverfront area and also vernal pool habitat. Did I miss the part where vernal pool was supposed to stay within the 100-foot setback? Or have we decided that it's now going to be 200 feet?
I think it's just a grammatical thing that I need to check. I'll put the vernal pool habitat up in the other stuff that is 100 feet and leave riverfront by itself. I can see how make that, I see how that would be confusing.
Okay.
It has a 100.
Okay, that was my issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments on the discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call. Those in favor say aye. I'll start with Stan.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Carolyn.
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
Myself, Brad Chase, aye. Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Amy, for all the work you did, and for everyone else for helping contribute to this. It's really a long time in the works, and it's some good progress. I hope it gets passed. That's the key.
Me too. All right, that's all we got, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I think we've done well. Any new business? All right, I'm ready
Already
to go have
started
dinner.
loading stuff in your Dropbox for March 3rd.
Oh, God. All right, well,
I do
I move to
recommend.
adjourn.
Huh?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I know if you can start reviewing things earlier, I know everyone's strapped for time, but it's definitely it's going to be way too much to kind of digest in one sitting prior to a meeting. So we may even start site visits a hair earlier around the lunchtime hour. We'll see how that goes. I am going to see if there's any I can weed out and convince to move over to the 17th, but right now we have 14 hearings on March 3rd.
How many NOIs?
I don't know, but at least half of what I saw is not a slam dunk.
Oh, jeez.
So 15 minutes per hearing, that's 3.5 hours. So this is a serious
Put a
question.
limit, yeah.
Is it possible for the chair to just at the beginning say, we're not going to spend any more than whatever it is, 10 or 15 minutes on any of these hearings, because we don't plan to stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, Chatham used to do time limits, and so people can be prepared for that. I can reach out to applicants prior to the meeting and say, you're going to be limited. So they don't propose, so they can consolidate their presentation. Chatham used to do that.
Does the chair agree to do that?
Sorry.
Well, here's
Mr.
the
Chairman?
problem. I think. Yeah, well, it's a nice concept, but we spent 45 minutes on 19 Lacrosse tonight, and I wish I had a gavel to say let's move on from this. That one had a lot of complexity, but if we spend 45 minutes on all such hearings, we're doomed. So.
Oh, right, exactly. That's my point. It's like either we give them each a fair 15 minutes or whatever the number is, or we end up actually not getting to 3/4 of them.
It's tough. 19 Lacrosse, you couldn't do that in 15, and yet 45 was too much for me. I can endeavor to move things along, but with this format, it's harder than ever, I think, because you've got to give people their due time to speak, and so we'll try, you know, and now I can get harder to, you know, just move things along. I've sat in twice the last month with Braintree Conservation Commission hearings for projects I've been working on, and that chair, she did a really good job of just saying, okay, we're moving on, and she would just, you know, move on to the next one. And but I think you can do that, but you've got to give people a chance, you know, the proponents to say.
Would it help if we submit our questions in advance?
Yes.
I mean, that would be great. I know that it's hard. I struggle with preparation time working, you know, so I think that would help. And I wonder if for some hearings we cannot run through comments with everybody and just say, okay, who has comments on this one?
Is there a possibility you can limit the amount of applicants on a given meeting? Put a cap on it?
Well, yes and no. The Wetlands Protection Act says we are required to have a hearing within 21 days of receipt of an application. But our bylaw says we're required to hear it within 21 days unless a waiver is given by the applicant. Now, I've seen waivers hold up in court, and I've seen them not hold up in court. So it's a tricky thing, because sometimes sometimes a judge will say, well, they gave written consent. And other ones will say, I don't care about written consent. The law says this. I can certainly go through. Nikki and I have really just started pawing through some of these. I can go through and see if any look like I can ask them to be put off. We're still going to have to open them and continue them because they've already notified their abutters. But yeah, I mean, the best I can do is to ask and see if anybody can be put off, and to let them know that we have a huge agenda and they need to limit their presentation.
And nobody here as late as we are.
Just pressing the point a little further, the law says they have to have a hearing in 21 days, but it doesn't say the hearing has to be closed or that any resolution has to be found. So again,
we can continue.
We open the hearing, limit it to 15 minutes, and if the applicant wants to spend the entire 15 minutes making their case, and then at the end of 15 minutes, we just continue and try to spread them out so that we can deal with a whole bunch. Because we're not going to get to them all if we don't do that.
When we take a vote, can we do a common vote, yays, nays? And if it's not unanimous, then we take an individual vote?
No, not with how video open meeting law is going.
But they do that at town meeting.
They're not, I don't know. I don't know what the regulation is there. I know for regulatory board, you have to do roll call.
Okay.
In Zoom, you can do thumbs up with the little.
I agree. We're really going to have to try our best to limit conversation. And I know everyone is super busy, so I hate asking you to, do review much ahead that you normally would. But I'll go through them. I don't have a lot of time tomorrow. I have our AmeriCorps member, and we have a bunch of stuff to do before the snow. But Friday, I should have time to really start going through the applications. So.
In fairness to the applicant, as long as they have the opportunity to accept the continuance early on, they're not held up and they're not put off, but they still know they've got their place in line. So I think,
yeah,
presenting that opportunity as eloquently as you will, I'm sure, is going to be beneficial.
Who knows what March 17th will bring? I have no idea. We had no clue we were getting this many. Normally, many more people ask us for pre-application conferences. We knew maybe 2 or 3 that were coming in.
The other problem is if we defer too many, then we're stuck the next meeting, so.
Exactly. Well, all right. It's 10:30. What do we, do you like what we had proposed? Just let them know ahead of time. You can definitely cut it off, Brad, at any point in time. I have a dog right here.
Yeah, I like what John suggests. 15 minutes may not work, but I think at some point we can just say, okay, we'll come back and continue this at a later date. So I can do that. Did you folks feel like I was moving things along tonight? I think I really tried to speed up a little bit, and I don't know. Did you guys notice that or not?
I think it went pretty well. I think I know I have to watch myself and try to say as little as possible. And that's just, all of us are going to have to do that. If we have that many, we're just all going to have to bite our tongues and not say any more or ask any questions that aren't actually relevant. I mean, I know I get off on that myself sometimes. Just have to try to limit the whole thing.
I said no comment quite a bit tonight, so.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are good.
All right. We'll work on it. All right, folks. So I'm going to motion that we adjourn tonight.
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Stan?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Carolyn?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Ernie?
Aye.
Myself, Brad Chase, aye. Thank you all. Very productive meeting again. So, all right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Good night.